Chapter 2139. Wu Chang, you bastard, you will die a horrible death. Xiao Baiyi couldn't help but roar when he saw Wu Chang and the others running away while the flame beast chased after them. Wu Chang turned around and glanced at him mockingly, then without saying a word, fled at an extremely fast speed. Roar, the earth-shattering roar rang out again, and this deafening sound set off a terrifying sound wave, causing everyone to lose their balance. What's more, the fiery red pillar of flames that followed was the soul summoning's killing move. Fortunately, everyone had seen the terrifying means of this flame beast before, so when they heard the roar, they hurriedly changed direction and avoided this deadly attack. Split up, life or death is up to fate, Xiao Baiyi shouted in a low voice. While speaking, he was the first to change the direction of his escape, and even took the opportunity to turn around and attack the flame beast. He obviously wanted to lead the flame beast away so that the others would have time to escape. As the leader of the team, Xiao Baiyi's actions were undoubtedly very appropriate. Unfortunately, his hasty attack did not hurt the flame beast, and before it could hit it, it was destroyed by the scorching heat of its body. The flame beast did not pay attention to him at all and continued to chase after the others. After Xiao Baiyi finished speaking, the others also scattered, turning into streams of light and escaping in different directions. No way, my luck is so good. Yang Kai took a moment to look back, only to see that the flame beast was chasing after him, ignoring the others. He didn't know how he had attracted it. You're really blind, you dog. You can't chase after anyone. But, this is good, he muttered to himself. Although in the face of such a terrifying existence, he had no desire to fight, but when it came to escaping, he was still a little confident. As long as this flame beast kept chasing after him, the others would be safe. Although Yang Kai had no friendship with the people of Azure Sun Temple, perhaps entering the Four Seasons realm could be considered as occupying one of their slots, so it was acceptable for him to contribute where he could. Therefore, when he saw the flame beast chasing after him, he instead reduced his speed a little to maintain a certain distance between himself and the flame beast. This way, he would not give himself no room to dodge the attack, nor would he allow the flame beast to be shaken off by him. Just like that, he led the flame beast deeper into the Four Seasons realm. Gradually, Yang Kai could no longer see the figures of the others. The flame beast was persistent. It kept chasing after them, and from time to time, it would spit out scorching energy attacks from its mouth. Although it was powerful, it was still a monster beast after all. Its long-range attacks seemed to be a little limited. Therefore, it was not difficult for Yang Kai to hide. As long as he was prepared in advance, there was no need to worry about being hit by the attack. Half an hour later, Yang Kai estimated that it was about time. Only then did he suddenly circulate his source qi, increasing his speed. The wooden boat given to him by Auntie Feng was a Dao Source grade high-rank artifact. Apart from Emperor artifacts, it was the best flight-type artifact. Moreover, it was very small and very suitable for solo flight. The flame beast could only follow behind him and eat his dust. After a while, from a very far distance, the flame beast's unwilling roar could be heard, but it had already disappeared. Obviously, Yang Kai had long shaken it off. However, Yang Kai still did not relax. While releasing his divine sense to explore the surroundings, he continued to fly. After another half an hour, when he was sure that he was safe, he slowly descended. This place was still the territory of summer, and the environment was scorching hot. The place where Yang Kai was located was a dry plain. Looking around, he could see everything within a radius of a few thousand kilometers at a glance. He took out the jade slip, checked the map of the Four Seasons realm, and then compared it with the places he had passed before to identify the direction. After a short while, he summoned the wooden boat again and flew in a certain direction. The main purpose of his trip to the Four Seasons realm was naturally to find the tribulation fruit. The tribulation fruit only grew in a cold environment all year round, so the summer territory undoubtedly did not meet the requirements. He had to rush to the winter territory as soon as possible to have any hope of finding this spirit fruit. In this secret world, he did not dare to fly too high, and he had to be vigilant at all times, which consumed a lot of his divine sense. An hour later, Yang Kai flew over a canyon that had split open. But soon, he flew back, suspended in midair, and narrowed his eyes to look inside the canyon. He did not know whether this canyon was naturally formed or not, but it was bottomless. Looking down from above, it was dark below, and from the bottom of the canyon, there was the whistling of strong winds. The reason why he flew back was naturally because he had sensed something different in that instant. Now that he had taken a closer look, his eyes could not help but light up, and he whispered, "Could it be?" While speaking, he had already rushed down the canyon. It was strange to say that the summer territory was hot everywhere, but the interior of the canyon was not affected by the environment. After entering, Yang Kai felt a trace of coldness, and the lower he went, the less he was affected by the heat. This made him feel more and more sure that his observation was not wrong. The canyon was at least several thousand feet deep, and when Yang Kai fell to 2,000 feet, he saw a layer of dense fog below. "Haha, it really is a spirit chi-si." Yang Kai laughed. From the information in the jade slip, he learned that in the Four Seasons realm, there were some places that had extremely rich world energy, like a sea of clouds and fog. This was the spirit chi-si. The world energy contained in the spirit chi-si was rich and pure, and it was most suitable for a cultivator to use for cultivation or breakthrough. However, because each time the Four Seasons realm opened, there were only 33 heavens, so under normal circumstances, even if a cultivator encountered a spirit chi-si, they would not stay for a long time. At most, they would search the spirit chi-si to see if they could find any treasures. In this kind of rich world energy place, the chances of giving birth to treasures were not small. Some people found emperor-grade spirit medicines in the spirit chi-si, and their value was immeasurable. Some people encountered accidents in the spirit chi-si. Monster beasts also liked places with rich world energy, so it was very likely that there was a powerful monster beast entrenched below. The spirit chi-si below the canyon was even more concentrated than when the Four Seasons realm opened. The lower Yang Kai went, the more he could feel the amazing world energy. In this kind of place, even if he did not use his cultivation, the omnipresent world energy would enter through his pores, allowing him to recover the strength he had consumed. After a full quarter of an hour, Yang Kai arrived at the bottom of the canyon. There was a gravel field below. It was a bit messy, but there did not seem to be any danger. After Yang Kai released his divine sense, he did not detect any signs of life here. He did not relax his vigilance. Instead, he wandered around and checked. After confirming that the area within 100 kilometers was extremely safe, he returned to the starting point. He opened his mouth and spat out the sealed world bead, injecting a stream of source chi into it. The next moment, 3 beautiful figures appeared together. One of them was sitting cross-legged and seemed to be cultivating. The other was standing quietly with an expressionless face. The other was lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread out. He looked bored and had nothing to do. His eyes were empty and lifeless. Yang Kai glanced at the figure lying on the ground and could not help but sneer. "Sir." Zhong Ruo Shi, who was meditating cross-legged, opened her eyes and saw Yang Kai appear in front of her. She hurriedly got up and shouted. Liu Yang, who appeared at the same time, also gently nodded to Yang Kai, then looked around with her beautiful eyes to check the situation. Hua Qing Sai, who was lying on the ground with a languid and half-dead appearance, was stunned for a while. She was still a little confused about the situation, but soon, she jumped up from the ground nimbly and pushed the source chi in her body. She looked at Yang Kai vigilantly and said, "You bastard, what do you want to do?" She had been imprisoned in the sealed world bead by Yang Kai, and the most hateful thing was that Yang Kai had placed a barrier under her, limiting her range of movement to 1,000 meters. In that damned place, she was all alone, and there was no one to talk to. She was almost tortured to death. Just now, she was lying on the ground, but she did not expect to be directly summoned by Yang Kai, causing her image to be greatly damaged. As a woman who cared about face, she was naturally angry out of shame. As she spoke, her beautiful eyes burst into flames and her silver teeth creaked. Her beautiful eyes looked around and suddenly fixed on Zhong Ruo Shi. Yang Kai smiled and said, "Before you act, I have to warn you. If you dare to attack her to threaten me, I advise you not to move, otherwise, the consequences will be very serious." Hua Qing Sai's expression could not help but change slightly, and a trace of hesitation flashed across her face. She did want to attack the weakest Zhongruo just now. Although she did not know the relationship between Zhongruo and Yang Kai, Hua Qing-sai still heard the little girl call Yang Kai sir. As long as she could capture Zhongruo, she should have the capital to talk to Yang Kai. Her expression changed, and Yang Kai said again, "The idea of attacking me is even more stupid. Since I dared to let you out, I can throw you back in again. If you don't want to suffer, just stand there obediently and don't move." Hua Qing-sai gritted her teeth and said, "You demon, I curse you to die without a complete corpse. Verbal attacks that don't hurt or itch are meaningless to me." Yang Kai curled his lips. After that, he ignored Hua Qing-sai and turned to Zhongruo and said, "The world energy here is very rich. Cultivate well here. Liu Yang will protect you." "Yes." Zhongruo did not ask any more questions and followed Yang Kai's arrangement. She continued to sit cross-legged and closed her eyes to cultivate. "But I won't give you much time, 2 days at most," Yang Kai added. After that, he stretched out his hand and patted the sealed world bead. The sealed world bead immediately flashed a ray of light. Then, a crazy attractive force came from inside the sealed world bead, pulling in the surrounding world energy and pouring it in. On the surface of the sealed world bead, a visible eye appeared directly, and as it rotated, the world energy was constantly being sucked in. Chapter 2140. When ordinary martial artists encountered a spirit aura sea, they could only look at it and sigh. It was impossible for them to waste their precious time here and use the abundant spirit aura to cultivate. Yang Kai wouldn't do that either. But he had the sealed world bead. Although the world energy inside the sealed world bead wasn't thin, it was still quite lacking compared to here. As long as he used the sealed world bead to absorb all the world energy here, the cultivation environment inside the sealed world bead should become better. Yang Kai suddenly had an idea. After all, the sealed world bead had absorbed a large amount of world principles in the 5-colored treasure pagoda last time. Since it could even absorb world principles, there was no reason it couldn't absorb world energy. Sure enough, this experiment was a success. A huge wind eye condensed on the surface of the sealed world bead, and as it rotated, the surrounding world energy was sucked into the emperor bead and filled the sealed world bead. Yang Kai was overjoyed. The success of this experiment meant that he could improve the cultivation environment of the sealed world bead to a level comparable to the best cultivation paradise in the star boundary in the future. Of course, the premise was that he had to find more spirit energy seas. He handed the sealed world bead to Liu Yang and asked Liu Yang to take care of Zhongruo while holding the emperor bead. Liu Yang understood tacitly and took it without saying a word. He then retreated a little to avoid the sealed world bead disturbing Zhongruo's cultivation. Only then did he tilt his head at Hua Qing-sai, motioning for her to step aside to talk. Hua Qing-sai said angrily, "Am I your pet? Do you think I can be ordered around by you?" Yang Kai said, "If you don't want to, then forget it. Just go back and wait." Good, you have guts." Hua Qing-sai was so angry that smoke came out of her head. Her vitality was surging. But he had no choice but to endure the humiliation for the time being. After leading Hua Qing-sai some distance away and confirming that they wouldn't disturb Zhongruo, Yang Kai looked around and asked, "Have you thought about what I told you before?" "What's the matter?" Hua Qing-sai casually responded to Yang Kai while looking for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack. However, what she didn't understand was that Yang Kai, the First Order Dao Source Realm, had his back to her the entire time. His entire body was full of openings. It was as if he didn't take her seriously at all. Combined with his previous arrogant words and confident attitude, Hua Qing-sai couldn't help but feel a little worried. She didn't know what would happen if she really launched a sneak attack. She had had enough of being imprisoned in the small sealed world. If she were to be locked up again, she would go crazy. Playing dumb? Yang Kai stopped and turned around to look at her. "I don't know what you're talking about." Hua Qing-sai looked like a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. Yang Kai grinned and said, "I'll explain it to you first. I just think it's inhumane to keep you locked up in there. After all, you and I have no enmity. You're so reasonable." Hua Qing-sai's beautiful eyes lit up as she looked at Yang Kai eagerly. "If that's the case, then, in your dreams." Yang Kai snorted coldly, turned around, and continued to walk forward, but you know my biggest secret. Therefore, if there is no way to restrain you, this time is an exception. You won't have such a good opportunity next time. If you really don't want to give up your soul brand, then be prepared to be locked up by me for the rest of your life. Hua Qing Sai's pretty face changed slightly. After a moment of silence, she said, "Will you give up your soul brand to someone you don't know and not be able to control their life and death?" "I won't." Yang Kai shook his head. "Then isn't that right? If you won't, then why should I?" "Because I'm stronger than you," Yang Kai answered matter-of-factly. Hua Qing Sai's mouth twitched. She said, "A mere first-order Dao Source realm dares to say such things in front of me. Where does your confidence come from? There's no need to test me. If you really thought you could beat me, you would have already done it. Why bother to trick me?" Yang Kai sneered. He turned around again, his eyes cold and emotionless as he looked at Hua Qing Sai and said, "My patience is limited. You must give me an answer now. If you don't want to give up your soul brand, then be prepared to endure the suffering of being locked up forever. I won't give you another chance in your life." Seeing him so serious, Hua Qing Sai's heart sank. She realized that in front of Yang Kai's ultimatum, she could no longer bluff her way out. She gritted her teeth and opened her mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know where to start. Yang Kai said, "The reason why I didn't force you last time was because I wanted to give you some time to think carefully. I think you should have thought it through long ago. It's just a choice. Is it that difficult?" "Yes, I have thought it through." Hua Qing Sai pursed her lips and answered. "Oh, then your answer is?" Yang Kai looked at her with interest. Hua Qing Sai gritted her teeth and said, "If I give up my soul brand to you." "Damn it, can you not show such a scheming smile? It makes me feel like I've been tricked." "Continue." Kai Yang replied in a deadpan manner, taking advantage of this opportunity to restrain his expression. "Will you ask me to do something that will endanger my life?" Hua Qing Sai asked sharply. "I've always been tolerant and generous to my own people. If there's something really dangerous, I'll do it myself." When Yang Kai answered, Hua Qing Sai's beautiful eyes stared at his eyes, as if she wanted to see if he was lying. But what surprised her was that Yang Kai's eyes were very calm, and he didn't avoid looking at her. Hua Qing Sai nodded. "I need my own privacy. You can't pry into my secrets, and you can't order me to do things that go against my will and conscience." "Okay." Yang Kai agreed readily, which made Hua Qing Sai stunned. She didn't expect him to be so easy to talk to. "Will you be good to me in the future?" Hua Qing Sai asked again. Yang Kai said with a strange expression, "Are you going to marry me? Why are you asking such a shameful question?" Hua Qing Sai flew into a rage out of humiliation. "You're thinking too much, you're shameless." Yang Kai smiled and said, "My answer is, even if I raise a dog." Before he could finish speaking, Hua Qing Sai punched him in the face. Yang Kai raised his hand to block it and said, "I'll also be good to it, not to mention you're a human." Hua Qing Sai gritted her teeth and suddenly jumped back a few steps. Source Qi surged from her body and she shouted, "One last question. Since you want me to offer you my soul brand, you must have strength that I recognize. Although I don't think I can beat you, but I have to try." As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and summoned her ribbon artifact. The ribbon rose in the wind and suddenly turned into a rainbow bridge, running from north to south and wrapping around Yang Kai with destructive power. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Kai Yang stood in place and didn't move, coldly saying, "After seeing my methods, you won't have the chance to refuse." Hua Qing Sai didn't answer. Instead, she formed a series of hand seals and the rainbow bridge formed by the ribbons suddenly condensed into a rope. In the blink of an eye, it wrapped around Yang Kai like a dumpling. Even his nose and mouth couldn't be seen. "Ah!" Hua Qing Sai was stunned, not expecting Yang Kai to be so easy to deal with. If so, before she could feel the joy in her heart, she heard Yang Kai suddenly snort and say, "It seems you're mentally prepared." At this point, Yang Kai's figure suddenly became illusory, as if he had disappeared from this space. The ribbon that tightly wrapped around him also loosened. Space secret technique, Nihility. Once this move was used, Yang Kai could escape into a void crack, thereby avoiding some fatal attacks. In addition, he could also use nihility to hide his figure and aura, allowing him to gather information. How is this possible? Hua Qing-sai's pretty face changed. Haven't you seen a space secret technique before? Yang Kai's voice suddenly came from the other side. Hua Qing-sai's face changed again as she turned her head and saw Yang Kai floating there unscathed, looking at her with a playful expression. Space secret technique. Hua Qing-sai shouted, her beautiful eyes flashing with disbelief. Moon blade. Yang Kai raised his hand and dozens of pitch-black void cracks with crescent-shaped blades appeared and slashed towards Hua Qing-sai. Perceiving the terrifying lethality contained in this strange attack, Hua Qing-sai did not dare to be negligent and shouted, "Butterfly dance." Her tender body spun and a multicolored light burst out, transforming into multicolored butterflies that flew forward to meet the attack. Asterisk hong hong hong, asterisk the moon blade collided with the countless butterflies, creating a violent explosion as energy surged and the world energy aura became chaotic. Star-chasing arrow. Seeing her first move fail, Hua Qing-sai immediately used another Star Soul Palace secret technique. After all, she was from Star Soul Palace, the overlord sect of the Southern Territory, and she had a powerful third-order Dao Source realm cultivation. Hua Qing-sai was by no means an ordinary person. Whether it was her combat experience, her strength, or her ability to adapt on the spot, she was outstanding. As soon as the secret technique was used, specks of starlight appeared on the surface of Hua Qing-sai's body and condensed into an arrow. With a slight tremor, the arrow pierced through space and arrived directly in front of Yang Kai, intending to pierce through his head. Child's play. Yang Kai coldly snorted, principal strength lingering around his hand as he grasped the star-chasing arrow and crushed it to pieces. Hua Qing-sai's heart thumped violently, as if what Yang Kai had crushed was not the star-chasing arrow but her own heart, asking in amazement, how can you do this? Yang Kai grinned fiercely and said arrogantly, the 3,000 great paths and thousands of secret techniques are nothing more than a combination of world energy and world principles. Your secret technique only relies on world energy, not world principles. As long as you understand the power of this world energy, breaking it will be a piece of cake. Hua Qing-sai's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. She was already in the third-order Dao Source realm and was only a step away from the Emperor realm, and the Star Soul Palace she came from was not a small sect, but she had never heard such an outrageous viewpoint. However, it was precisely this absurd statement that touched and inspired her greatly. Her brow furrowed as she suddenly withdrew her hand and fell into contemplation. Chapter 2141. Hua Qing-sai didn't make any more moves, and Yang Kai didn't counterattack either. He just stood there and waited quietly. After a while, Hua Qing-sai sighed slightly and looked up at Yang Kai. She still had trump cards and ultimate moves that she hadn't used yet. She had only used half of her strength in the probing and attack just now. However, she also understood that Yang Kai hadn't used his full strength either. Even if she could defeat this man in his normal state, how could she defeat him in his demon form? The scene of her being subdued by this demon in one move was still vivid in her mind. Every time she thought about it, Hua Qing-sai shuddered. That was an absolute suppression of strength, and she couldn't resist at all. Therefore, Hua Qing-sai didn't want to continue probing. With the other party's current cultivation in the first-order Dao Source realm, the fact that he could deal with her attacks so easily was enough to prove his strength and heaven-defying aptitude. What's more, this person actually knew the Tao of space. He even had an emperor artifact like the sealed world bead. Resigned to your fate. Yang Kai smiled slightly. He could read some information from the look in her eyes. Hua Qing-sai pursed her red lips and didn't say a word. Don't show such an aggrieved expression. I can't bear it. Yang Kai couldn't help but laugh. Don't worry. In a few years, you'll understand how wise your choice was today. If you miss an opportunity like today, even if you cry and beg to join me in the future, I won't take you in. Your ability to boast shamelessly is top-notch. Hua Qing-sai said sarcastically. Let's wait and see. Yang Kai smiled and said, all right. Let's not waste any more time. I still have things to do. Obediently offer up your soul brand. Hua Qing-sai sighed again and sat down cross-legged. She closed her beautiful eyes and silently circulated her secret art. Seeing her like this, Yang Kai's expression became serious and he floated down, standing not far in front of her. After a short while, Hua Qingsai's body suddenly trembled. Her facial features were somewhat distorted, as if she was enduring great pain. A burst of pure spiritual energy suddenly burst out from her knowledge sea and shot straight towards Yang Kai. Noticing this, Yang Kai hurriedly opened up his knowledge sea's defenses and accepted this spiritual energy. Closing his eyes, his soul avatar manifested in his knowledge sea. Yang Kai discovered that there was a strange spiritual force in his knowledge sea. This spiritual force lingered together, forming a brand shape, quietly suspended in mid-air. Within the brand, there was Hua Qingsai's spiritual aura. Yang Kai's soul avatar formed a series of hand seals. Following that, he moved. His sea of knowledge churned, converging into a monstrous wave. He opened his mouth and swallowed the brand into his stomach like a ferocious beast. Below the canyon, Hua Qingsai suddenly shuddered. She opened her beautiful eyes and found Yang Kai looking at her with a smile on his face. She immediately snapped, "What are you looking at?" Yang Kai said, "Quite the temper." Hua Qingsai coldly snorted in dissatisfaction and said with an awkward expression, "It feels strange." This was the first time she had offered her soul brand to someone else. Although this practice had no effect on her body, it still gave her a subconscious feeling of discomfort. It was as if something precious had been taken away from her. "You'll get used to it," Yang Kai said. "Now that we're on the same side, we're not outsiders. I hope we can get along well in the future. Don't think that saying this will improve my impression of you. I'm just being oppressed and enslaved by you," Hua Qingsai replied coldly. "Think what you want," Yang Kai shrugged. "I wanted to ask just now." Hua Qingsai changed the topic, looking around and asking, "What is this place? How can there be a spirit chi sea?" "You really do know about spirit chi seas," Yang Kai smiled slightly. "Although there aren't many spirit chi seas, there are still some in the star boundary. My Star Soul Palace has a spirit chi sea." Hua Qingsai glanced at Yang Kai contemptuously. "This is the Four Seasons realm," Yang Kai said. Hua Qingsai was stunned and immediately exclaimed, "Huh? You said this is the Four Seasons realm?" "Yes." Hua Qingsai frowned, but soon, as if thinking of something, she muttered to herself, "Yes, it's time for the Four Seasons realm to open. But, how did you get the qualifications to enter this place?" "I remember that Maplewood City doesn't have a quota. By chance, I came in with the people of Azure Sun Temple," Yang Kai replied. "Why did the people of Azure Sun Temple bring you in?" Hua Qingsai was even more puzzled. "Every quota to enter is extremely precious. I can't explain it clearly for a while. Anyway, I took one of their quotas." Yang Kai waved his hand. "Took?" Hua Qingsai's expression was very interesting. While the two were talking, a fork in the road appeared in front of them. Yang Kai stopped and said, "Let's go separately. The probability of heaven and earth treasures being born in this place is not small. It would be a pity to miss it. Let me make it clear first, if I find something good." Hua Qingsai's adaptability was also quite strong. After the initial depression, she was now bargaining with Yang Kai. "It's yours, I won't take it from you," Yang Kai replied readily. "I was waiting for you to say that." Hua Qingsai pursed her lips and smiled, taking the lead to rush to the left fork. "Come back and meet me in 2 days at most," Yang Kai said behind her back, not knowing if she heard him or not. But it didn't matter. Now that he had control of Hua Qingsai's soul brand, as long as they were not too far apart, Yang Kai could clearly see her location. Shortly after she left, Yang Kai stepped into the right fork. This place was relatively far from where Zhong Ruoshi was, but the world energy was still like a fog. However, it was obvious that under the pull of the sealed world bead, the rich world energy was flowing madly in a certain direction, decreasing at a very significant rate. In a place like the Spirit Chi Sea, there was a high possibility of precious treasures being born. Not long after Yang Kai entered the right fork, he found an Earthblood Ghost orchid on the stone wall. Although it was only a Dao Source grade mid-rank spirit herb, it was an extremely rare spirit herb. Although it was rare, it could be used as the main material for refining many spirit pills, so its value was naturally not low. Most importantly, there was no market for it. Yang Kai carefully picked it and stored it in a jade box, preparing to transplant it into the medicine garden in the sealed world bead when he returned. Only in this way could the medicinal properties of the spirit herb be completely preserved, and he could even use the characteristics of the medicine garden to enhance its efficacy. In the next few hours, he repeatedly harvested in the bottom of the canyon. The rich world energy here nurtured spirit grasses and miraculous medicines that were rarely seen in the outside world. For an alchemist like Yang Kai, this was tantamount to a treasure trove. After this trip, he actually obtained 7 or 8 different kinds of herbs of different grades, which was a small harvest. But what made him feel regretful was that he didn't find any Emperor-grade precious treasures, only Dao Source-grade ones. Although Dao Source-grade and Emperor-grade herbs were only 1 grade apart, their effects were completely different. Every Emperor-grade herb contained the power of world principles, and whether it was swallowed or used for alchemy, it could allow a cultivator to comprehend the power of world principles, which was extremely useful to any cultivator. This canyon seemed to stretch on for an unknown number of kilometers. Although Yang Kai's speed wasn't fast because he was looking for treasures, after walking for a few hours, he had covered at least a few hundred kilometers, yet he still hadn't seen the end. Just as he was about to continue exploring, he suddenly felt a sense of uneasiness in his heart. He frowned and glanced back in the direction he came from. In the next moment, his face changed slightly and he shouted, "You're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, he summoned his wooden boat and stepped on it, rushing back the way he came at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, somewhere in the canyon, Zhong Ruo she was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The surrounding world energy was constantly flowing into her body, and her own aura was rising at a clear speed. She was only a second-order Saint King, but she actually climbed to the third-order Saint King realm in a very short time, and showed no signs of stopping. Soon, she was close to the threshold of the origin returning realm. Not far from her, Liu Yang was holding the sealed world bead, looking ahead with an indifferent expression. 3 men stood a few dozen meters away. The 3 of them didn't look alike, but their clothes were very similar. If someone who was familiar with the sects in the Southern Territory was here, they would be able to tell from the patterns on their chests that these 3 were from a sect called Evil Moon Valley. Evil Moon Valley and Blue Feather Sect were similar in strength, so when the Four Seasons realm opened this time, they also obtained 3 spots to enter. After these 3 were accepted into the Four Seasons realm, they just happened to appear near this canyon. Among the 3, one was an elderly man, and the other 2 were middle-aged men. The elderly man was a third-order Dao Source realm cultivator, while the 2 middle-aged men were both second-order Dao Source realm cultivators. They didn't intend to explore this canyon. After all, from the top, the inside of the canyon was dark, and they didn't know what kind of shocking danger it contained. Although the cultivation of these 3 wasn't weak, compared to the disciples from the great sects, they were actually much weaker. They also knew their limits and didn't dare to take risks easily. But what they didn't expect was that there would be an unusual energy fluctuation coming from below the canyon. When the sealed world bead absorbed the world energy in this spirit chi sea, it produced a very obvious movement. Out of curiosity, the 3 didn't care too much and flew down the canyon, wanting to see what was going on. After all, no one could say for sure what kind of opportunity it was. What if this was a great opportunity that would allow them to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat? But when they discovered that there were 2 women at the bottom of the canyon, the 3 of them were suddenly stunned. Liu Yang wasn't too bad. Although he didn't give off the feeling of a flesh and blood life form, he still had the appearance of a first-order Dao Source realm cultivator, so it made sense that he could enter the Four Seasons realm. The other little girl was outrageous. A trivial third-order Saint King cultivator actually appeared in the Four Seasons realm. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, the 3 of them would have thought this was a dream. And, looking at the appearance of the little girl, it seemed that she wanted to use the rich world energy here to cultivate. What's going on? The 3 of them were confused. Chapter 2142. Brother Hua Ji. One of the middle-aged men glanced at them for a while before whispering suspiciously to the elderly man, Did a Saint King realm cultivator enter the Four Seasons realm? Damn it, it must be a disciple of one of those great sect. The other middle-aged man suddenly gritted his teeth in anger. My evil Moon Valley only occupies 3 spots in total, and even these 3 spots were obtained by paying a lot of tribute to Orthodoxy Temple. But these great sects can actually squander them so wantonly and let a Saint King realm disciple occupy one of the spots. This is outrageous. Hearing what he said, the elderly man named Hua Jiu also nodded slightly and said, Junior brother Juan is right. These 2 women should be from a great sect, which is why one of them is qualified to enter this place with a Saint King realm cultivation. Looking at her appearance, she is about to break through to the origin returning realm. While speaking, Hua Jiu also felt a little envious and jealous. Thinking back to when he was cultivating, he had to take one step at a time, each step filled with thorns. For a little bit of cultivation resources, he had to risk his life, but these disciples from great sects were treated completely differently. They could casually enter the sealed world that he and the others had to go through a lot of trouble to enter and easily break through here. Comparing the two, he suddenly felt a little unbalanced. The middle-aged man who spoke before showed a look of fear and hesitated. Since they are from great sects, let's go first. If they misunderstand, it will be bad. Xiong Ning, what are you afraid of? The middle-aged man named Juan glanced at the man who spoke and coldly snorted. Even if they are disciples of great sects, they are just third-order Saint Kings in the first-order Dao Source realm. If they misunderstand, so be it. What can they do to us? Who said I was afraid? Xiong Ning was a little angry and shouted in a low voice, I just don't want to cause trouble for no reason. Mph, gutless rat. Juan coldly snorted with a look of contempt. It seemed that he looked down on his fellow disciple. The bead in that woman's hand should be a good artifact. Hua Jiu suddenly whispered, his eyes staring straight at the sealed world bead in Liu Yang's hand. Juan rolled his eyes and asked in a low voice, Brother Hua Jiu, you mean? Xiong Ning seemed to have realized something, and his expression changed slightly. Hua Jiu smiled faintly. This place is deep underground, and there are few people here. The opponent's strength is low, and he's holding a great treasure. When Juan heard this, he understood tacitly and said with a smile, I've long been displeased with the disciples of these large sects. They always flaunt their strength and are insufferably arrogant. Wasn't it just finding a good backer? What's so great about it? Brother Hua Jiu, tell me what to do. Junior brother will accompany you to the end. This isn't good, is it? Xiong Ning's legs trembled as he said incoherently, if the sect behind them knows, not only are we finished, I'm afraid evil Moon Valley will. Juan glanced at Xiong Ning coldly and said, if you're afraid, get the hell out of here now. Don't make sarcastic remarks, but I'll make it clear first. You won't get a share of the artifacts and spirit stones. Since these 2 women are from large sects, they should have a lot of good things on them. When Xiong Ning heard this, he swallowed his saliva, and a greedy expression appeared on his fearful face. He was silent for a few breaths, and finally gritted his teeth and said, Fine, I'll accompany you 2 brothers. That's more like it. Juan saw him compromise and couldn't help but smile. You 3 trash. Not far away. Liu Yang suddenly said coldly, and her first sentence made the 3 evil Moon Valley people's eyebrows jump. What are you mumbling about? What are you up to? Hua Jiu suppressed the unhappiness in his heart. He laughed and said, Young lady, you've misunderstood. The 3 of us merely sensed a strange energy fluctuation at the bottom of this canyon, so we came to investigate. We didn't expect the 2 of you to cause such a disturbance. Please forgive us for disturbing you. That's it. Liu Yang was still as cold as ice. That's it. Hua Jiu replied. Since you've finished investigating, why don't you get the hell out of here? Liu Yang's words were sharp, and she didn't mean to give the other party any face. This made the 3 evil Moon Valley people feel that Liu Yang must be from a large sect. Only the disciples of these large sects would be so arrogant and domineering. The anger in Hua Gu's heart rushed straight to his head, but he still had a smile on his face as he asked, Miss, which sect are you from? What does it have to do with you? Liu Yang coldly snorted. Miss, don't be so polite. Hua Jiu smiled slightly, but in my opinion, Mrs. Sect is nothing more than a few. My evil Moon Valley has a lot of exchanges with those large sects and we have a good relationship with each other. Although we took the liberty to disturb you, since we've met the two of you, it's fate." He paused for a moment and turned his eyes to Zhong Ruoshi. "I think this girl seems to be at the threshold of breaking through a great realm. The world energy here is rich, and I don't know if there are any fierce monster beast here. If a monster beast covets this place, with your cultivation, I'm afraid it will be difficult for you to deal with it." As he spoke, he put on a righteous posture and volunteered, "We are not talented, but we are willing to stand guard for the two of you." Juan also nodded fiercely and said, "Yes, yes, we will stand guard for you. Even if a monster beast comes, miss, you don't have to be afraid." Xiong Ning was silent, obviously having the same attitude. Liu Yang sneered, "You three trash? If a fierce monster beast really comes, I'm afraid the three of you won't be able to handle it. Miss, your words are too hurtful." The flames in Hua Gu's heart rose as he said with a gloomy face, "We have good intentions. Even if you don't want to accept it, you don't have to belittle us like this. Yes, although my evil Moon Valley is not a great sect, it is not something that can be insulted by just anyone." Juan shouted righteously. It was unknown how he connected Liu Yang's words with belittling evil Moon Valley. "What's the point of all this nonsense? Have you taken a fancy to me, or have you taken a fancy to this artifact?" Liu Yang said as she played with the sealed world bead in her hand, "Just grab it yourself, there's no need to beat around the bush." As soon as this remark came out, the faces of Hua Jiyu and the other two changed slightly. "Brother." Juan turned to look at Hua Jiyu. Hua Jiyu pondered for a moment and whispered, "It seems that she doesn't have any fellow disciples nearby. Otherwise, why haven't any of her fellow disciples appeared after we dealt with her for so long? This is really a heaven-sent opportunity." Juan had an excited expression on his face as he licked his lips with an eager expression. He was too lazy to pretend anymore. Instead, he looked at Liu Yang with a ferocious expression and said coldly, "Little girl, when I beat you to the ground and strip you naked, don't cry and beg for mercy." He didn't have any thoughts about Liu Yang, but Liu Yang's words just now stimulated the darkness and evil in the depths of his heart. He immediately decided that he must snatch the artifact, and he must snatch the person. When he thought of the opportunity to ravage and sully this proud daughter of a great sect that he didn't even dare to look at in the eyes before, Juan's blood boiled. "Do it!" Hua Jiyu shouted. In an instant, the three from Evil Moon Valley pushed their source chi. Although they were facing a woman whose cultivation was lower than theirs, the three of them didn't have the slightest bit of carelessness and used all their strength. The old man opened his mouth and spat out a large bell. The bell was densely engraved with countless small mysterious characters. After the source chi was poured into it, a halo visible to the naked eye suddenly appeared around the bell. It looked like it was impregnable. This big bell was a defensive artifact. Hua Jiyu summoned this artifact not to defend himself, but to drive it towards Zhong Ruoshi. His train of thought was very clear. Whether Liu Yang was difficult to deal with or not, Zhong Ruoshi was just a third-order Saint King. She was vulnerable in front of him. As long as he could capture Zhong Ruoshi first, what was there to fear about Liu Yang? Therefore, his target was Zhong Ruoshi. But just as the big bell was about to envelop Zhong Ruoshi, Liu Yang suddenly sneered, wishful thinking. With a wave of her hand, a black feather about a meter long flew out leisurely and flew directly to Zhong Ruoshi's side, turning into a burning barrier that wrapped around Zhong Ruoshi's body. The moment the feather manifested a barrier, a pressure that didn't belong to this world suddenly descended, scaring the three from Evil Moon Valley and causing them to tremble, their faces filled with fear. It was as if there was a very strong will hidden in the void, eyeing the three of them covetously. In an instant, the three of them broke out in a cold sweat, soaking their clothes. "What is this?" Hua Gu's eyes widened as he stared at the black flame barrier around Zhong Ruoshi. A terrifying burning force spread out, as if it wanted to burn everything. However, Zhong Ruoshi, who was sitting inside the barrier, remained unmoved, as if she wasn't affected at all. The bell-like artifact, on the other hand, flashed wildly under this terrifying heat, and the small, intricate characters engraved on its surface were broken one by one. Not only that, as soon as the bell came into contact with the black flame barrier, it was tainted with a trace of black flame, but this flame did not extinguish and instead continued to incinerate the spirituality of this artifact. The aura of a divine spirit. Hua Jiyu shouted in horror. He was also a cultivator of the third-order Tao source realm. Even if he had never seen a divine spirit, he could infer some clues from it. The terrifying pressure, the evil fire that seemed to be able to burn everything, all pointed to the most terrifying existence in this world, the divine spirit. He was right. The black feather was indeed the feather of a divine spirit, the Luan Feng. Yang Kai had given the Luan Feng feather he picked up to Liu Yang. After a long time, Liu Yang finally finished refining it and obtained a trace of divine spirit power from it. Even if this divine spirit power was weak, it was not something a Tao source realm cultivator could contend with. That was why Liu Yang didn't have the slightest fear of these three. Chapter 2143. The moment the three from Evil Moon Valley made their move, Liu Yang made a prompt decision and summoned the feather of the divine spirit to protect Zhong Ruoxi. Only then could she act freely. Asterisk screech. Asterisk a loud cry spread throughout the wilderness, waking up Hua Jiyu and the others who were immersed in shock and fear. The three of them looked up, but Liu Yang's figure was nowhere to be seen. Instead, they saw a strange bird with a body length of more than 10 meters, burning with red flames, spreading its wings and soaring into the sky. Inside the strange bird's body, there was a faint trace of lightning, indicating that it possessed two domineering attributes, thunder and fire. A confession. She's not human. Only then did Juan realize what was going on and shouted loudly. Liu Yang's appearance finally made him understand why he felt a little strange before. When he first saw Liu Yang, he felt that this woman was somewhat different from ordinary people, as if she was not made of flesh and blood. But now, he could completely conclude that Liu Yang was not a living creature. This is an artifact spirit. Hua Jiyu also reacted. His originally fearful eyes suddenly bloomed with a greedy light, and he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Ha ha ha, the heavens are really helping me. This old master was worried that he couldn't upgrade the grade of the Hellfire Pestle, but I didn't expect to meet an artifact spirit here. As he spoke, he suddenly shouted to the other two, junior brothers, this brother only wants this artifact spirit. After I get it, I'll let you divide the rest equally. Do you have any objections? Juan and Xiong Ning heard this, looked at each other, and nodded. We'll follow brother's decision. Good. Hua Jiyu nodded and stared at Liu Yang gloomily. Looking at your form, you already have your own consciousness. It's not easy to cultivate to this point. This old master is kind enough to let you live. If you obediently enter my Hellfire Pestle, I promise not to erase your divine sense. What do you think? As he spoke, he summoned a club-shaped artifact. This artifact had a rich aura and was full of spirituality, impressively at the level of Tao Source grade high rank. Such a secret treasure was also an extremely rare treasure. If an artifact spirit like Liu Yang could enter it and be refined by Hua Jiyu, the Karmic Fire Pestle might be qualified to be promoted to an Emperor artifact. Hua Jiyu of the Third Order Tao Source realm could even use the power of an Emperor artifact to pry into the mysteries of the Emperor realm. Therefore, even though he felt that the sealed world bead was very valuable, it was still not cheap. He also reluctantly gave it up, hoping that he could subdue Liu Yang. After all, his cultivation realm was the most fundamental power. After Hua Jiyu finished speaking, Liu Yang's reply was a pillar of fire. The raging flames that reached the heavens sprayed down from the sky, as if they were going to melt the earth, carrying with them a scorching heat. The Evil Moon Valley trio hastily dodged. Hua Jiyu still didn't give up and shouted, "Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Perhaps this old man would still fear it, but now that you've turned it into a barrier to protect this woman, what are you going to use to fight us? The thing he was referring to. Naturally, it was the feather of the Luan Phoenix. In his opinion, Liu Yang's decision to use her most powerful artifact as a shield was simply a mistake. In this way, although she could protect Zhong Ruoxi, she was definitely not the opponent of the three of them. After the three of them joined forces to deal with Liu Yang, how could Zhong Ruoxi survive alone? It was better to just ignore Zhong Ruoxi's life and death. She directly attacked the three of them with the power of the divine spirit in the Luanfeng's feather. Huff! Another pillar of fire sprayed down from the sky. Playing with fire in front of this old man, Hua Jiyu snorted coldly, and the hellfire pestle spun. It faced the pillar of fire sprayed by Liu Yang in the air. It was sucked up by the hellfire pestle without a single drop falling to the ground. At this time, he shouted with victory in his hand, "It seems that your mind is also very limited." Screech! A clear cry rang out again. Liu Yang opened his mouth, and a group of fireballs the size of washbasins came crashing down from the sky. "I already said it's useless, yet you're still coming." Hua Jiyu shouted impatiently, and the hellfire pestle met the attack again. Boom boom boom, a series of huge explosions rang out, and the world energy suddenly became chaotic. The fat man from the land of rebirth. What? At this moment, Hua Gu's face suddenly changed. He quickly made a hand seal and took back his hellfire pestle. Looking down, he found that his Dao Source grade high-rank artifact was actually wrapped in lightning arcs. When he held it in his hand, the pure lightning power transmitted to his body, causing his whole body to go numb. The power of the thunder attribute is also so strong. The greed and possessiveness in Hua Gu's eyes became more and more obvious. Such an artifact spirit was hard to come by in 10,000 years. If he could subdue it, his hellfire pestle might not only be promoted to an emperor artifact, but also possess the power of the thunder attribute. "Brother, don't talk nonsense with her. Since she doesn't want to surrender, we'll beat her until she does." Juan dodged 2 attacks with an impatient look. "Okay, but be careful. Don't hurt her spirituality." Hua Jiyu nodded and did not forget to remind him. Juan coldly snorted and said, "Junior brother doesn't know how to control your strength. If you really hurt her, she asked for it." As soon as he finished speaking, Juan flicked his wrist and a long spear appeared in his hand. The spear bloomed and shot towards Liu Yang. Xiong Ning, who had been silent all this time, also summoned his killer move. He put his palms together and pushed his source chi forward. Chaos Origin Divine Spear. Burning Sun Ghost Hand. The attacks of the 2 second-order Dao Source Realm Cultivator both borrowed the power of world principles. Drawing on the power of the world, their attacks were majestic and sharp as they blasted towards Liu Yang. Liu Yang's body flickered, and a layer of burning flames appeared around her huge body, turning into a barrier that blocked the attacks from both sides. Hong Hong. Liu Yang let out a shrill cry as the flame barrier shattered in an instant. Although it blocked most of the damage, there was still some remaining power that penetrated into her body, causing her body to change shape. She was almost unable to maintain her original appearance. At the moment when the barrier disappeared, Hua Gu's figure mysteriously appeared not far in front of Liu Yang. With a cold expression, he shouted at Liu Yang, "Look into this old master's eyes." As soon as he finished speaking, a mysterious power bloomed from his eyes, turning into 2 vortexes that constantly rotated, as if trying to pull Liu Yang's soul out of her body. This was undoubtedly a soul secret technique. Hua Jiyu used it at the most appropriate time, making it impossible for Liu Yang to avoid. Although Liu Yang had just broken through to the Dao Source realm not long ago and her combat power was quite good, the other party had the advantage in numbers after all. Furthermore, each of their cultivations was much higher than hers. Under the joint attack of the 3 of them, she was completely powerless. After being hit by the soul secret technique, Liu Yang's body suddenly froze in mid-air, and the frequency of her flapping wings slowed down. It seemed that her mind was a little chaotic, and she had no strength left to resist. Seeing this scene, Hua Jiyu was overjoyed. He felt that things were progressing unexpectedly smoothly. He could already imagine the wonderful scene of subduing this firebird artifact spirit and refining it into his hellfire pestle, so that his artifact could be promoted to an emperor artifact. A beautiful picture of the future seemed to be slowly unfolding in front of him. "Brother, be careful." Juan suddenly shouted. "What's wrong?" Hua Jiyu was shocked, but soon, his eyes widened because he saw an unusual flame burning in the pupils of the firebird in front of him. The flame seemed to be able to burn the divine soul. As soon as he came into contact with it, it made his sea of knowledge tumble and gave him a headache. The 12 steamed buns. Sun's true fire. Liu Yang had followed Yang Kai so far and had swallowed a lot of Sun's true fire contained in the Sun's true essence. Her body had also integrated with the heavenly thunder flame. If not for this, it would have been impossible for Liu Yang to gain sentience as an artifact spirit. It could be said that Liu Yang's flames were extremely complex, but each one was extremely rare. Hua Jiyu wanted to use a soul secret technique to deal with Liu Yang, but it was obviously a bit whimsical. In an instant, Hua Jiyu screamed and retreated. He covered his head with his hand and roared at Liu Yang unwillingly. "Are you so unwilling to submit to this old master?" He was a little crazy as he hysterically roared, "Good, since you are unwilling to submit, this old master will destroy your mind." Having said that, he formed a seal with both hands and the hellfire pestle suddenly grew bigger, turning into a flame. It trembled slightly in the void and shot towards Liu Yang like an arrow released from a bow. At the same time, Juan and Xiong Ning both showed their killing moves again. With the three of them joining forces, a trace of panic finally appeared in Liu Yang's eyes. With a twist of her body, countless bolts of lightning and fire flew out, mixed with a light blue ice flame in an attempt to resist. An earth-shattering sound rang out as a violent energy sputtered out. Juan and Xiong Ning's attacks were blocked, but the karmic flame pestle still shot straight towards Liu Yang without slowing down in the slightest. According to this posture, the hellfire pestle was bound to penetrate Liu Yang's body and cause her serious injuries. "You asked for it." A trace of distress flashed in Hua Gu's eyes, but there was no regret. After all, an artifact spirit with its own sentience was much more valuable than a chaotic and ignorant artifact spirit. Unfortunately, the other party was unwilling to submit, so he could only kill her. But at this moment, an unusual power fluctuation came and a heroic figure appeared in front of Liu Yang like a ghost. He stretched out his hand and gently patted forward, whispering, "Exile." The big hand slapped down and a dark black hole formed in the void. The hellfire pestle plunged into the black hole. Not good. Hua Gu's face changed dramatically, and he quickly urged his source chi to summon his artifact back before the black hole closed. Seeing the black hole quickly closing, Hua Gu's forehead was drenched in cold sweat. Although he had never seen a similar secret technique, he knew that if he hadn't reacted quickly, his artifact would have disappeared forever. "Who is it?" Juan saw that he had failed and couldn't help shouting, looking at the newcomer with an unfriendly expression. Xiong Ning also narrowed his eyes and looked forward. Above, a young man stood quietly in front of the Firebird. His eyes swept down coldly and his face was livid, as if he was extremely angry. Yang Kai was naturally in a bad mood. He originally thought that the bottom of the canyon was very safe. He had also checked the surrounding environment in advance and found no signs of a monster beast, so he was relieved to leave Zhong Ruoshi and Liu Yang here. He even left the sealed world bead behind. But he didn't expect that such an accident would happen not long after he left, forcing him to rush back. Chapter 2144. Master. When Liu Yang saw that Yang Kai had finally arrived, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. His huge body flickered as he transformed back into his human form and stood respectfully behind him. Yang Kai glanced at Zhong Ruoshi and saw that she was wrapped in a black flame barrier. The black flame contained an aura that made him wary yet familiar. He immediately understood that Liu Yang had used his strongest power to protect Zhong Ruoshi. If not for this, even if Liu Yang was no match for these three, he wouldn't have been in such a sorry state. "You've done well. Thank you for your hard work." Yang Kai nodded. "It's my duty." Liu Yang replied lightly. Yang Kai turned his head again and glanced coldly at the three people below. "Who are you?" Hua Jiyu almost suffered a big loss at the hands of Yang Kai just now, so he shouted indignantly, "Why are you ruining our business?" Yang Kai raised the corner of his mouth and said, "Are you deaf? Didn't you hear what she called me just now?" Hua Jiyu frowned and said, "So, you are the master of this artifact spirit? At least you're not an idiot." Yang Kai sneered. "Presumptuous." Hua Jiyu shouted angrily and said fiercely, "Trash from the First Order Dao Source Realm deserves to have such an artifact spirit. Boy, this old master advises you to obediently hand over this artifact spirit and this old master may spare your life. Otherwise, Otherwise, today, this place will be your burial place. Hua Jiyu shouted. Ha 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 ha. Yang Kai couldn't help but laugh arrogantly, as if he didn't put the other party in his eyes at all. After a while, his smile faded. Suddenly, he said in a deep voice, "If you say so, then, die." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Kai suddenly waved his hand. Along with his movement, a strange pressure suddenly descended from the sky. Below the canyon, the light was already dim, but at this moment, it suddenly became even darker. It was as if something was blocking the light from above. Hua Jiyu and the others looked up in amazement, and the next moment, they exclaimed in unison. "What the hell? This is not good, hide." The three shouted and scattered to the sides. Hong. The ground shook and the mountains shook. A behemoth suddenly fell from the sky and smashed into the ground, shattering it. The behemoth looked like a humanoid monster. It was as high as 7 or 8 stories his body. Hua Jiyu and the others were dumbfounded. Even with their knowledge and experience, the three of them had no idea what this thing was. At first glance, it looked somewhat similar to the legendary golem. But upon closer inspection. However, he soon realized that this thing was not a stone demon. Because it was, of course, it's impossible. "Oh, you're finally willing to let me out. It's the embodiment." Since the day the embodiment swallowed the floating continent, Yang Kai had cooperated with it to deal with the Purple Star's master and kept it in the sealed world bead. Over the years, the embodiment had never left the sealed world bead. After all, its body was formed from the fusion of an entire continent, so it was too big. If Yang Kai wanted to summon it out of the small sealed world bead, he would need to use a large amount of divine sense. It would require a huge amount of divine sense, so how could Yang Kai have the spare energy to summon his embodiment while fighting? He could only let it stay inside. As time passed, the benefits of the stone mungoose's special physique slowly manifested. It continued to temper its body, removing impurities, and making its huge body gradually smaller. But it still couldn't summon it at will. The appearance of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor technique was a turning point. This technique could be said to be tailor-made for the embodiment. Since practicing the heaven-devouring Great Emperor technique, coupled with the stone mungoose's divine technique, the embodiment's body had been greatly improved in a very short time. Even so, it was still a huge monster for humans. After Yang Kai summoned it at this moment, he felt that nearly 1/3 of his divine sense was consumed. Such a huge body was undoubtedly extremely shocking. Coupled with its strange appearance, Hua Jiyu and the others were all stunned for a while. It was as if they were in a dream. They couldn't believe their eyes. As the avatar warmed up, the gravel on its body kept falling down with a clattering sound. There was no need for Yang Kai to explain anything. As soon as the embodiment appeared, it immediately knew what was going on in front of it. It also knew that Hua Jiyu and the others were enemies. It grinned at the dumbfounded Hua Jiyu and said in a low, muffled voice, "A third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, as the first one to die by my hands after so many years, it's not a disgrace to my status. Well, I'll leave it to you. I'd like to see what kind of divine technique you have now." Yang Kai nodded lightly. There will be an unexpected surprise. The embodiment smiled. As it spoke, it suddenly bowed and punched at Hua Jiyu. The fist didn't seem to carry any trace of energy. It was just a direct hit, but where the fist passed, the wind rolled up like a gale rushed toward Hua Jiyu, wanting to engulf him. Hua Jiyu was shocked and exclaimed, "Are you kidding me?" He didn't dare to be negligent. He jumped and flew into the air. Although his cultivation was not weak, it was enough to reach the level of the third-order Dao Source realm, but how could he dare to take the blow of such a behemoth? The embodiment's body was huge, so it was naturally not very flexible. However, it seemed to have expected this, so the moment Hua Jiyu jumped into the air, it clenched its other hand into a fist and blasted it into the air. Hua Jiyu screamed again and hurriedly dodged. All of a sudden, the situation had turned into an overwhelming advantage. After dodging several attacks from the embodiment, Hua Gu's heart was relieved. He thought that this huge stone man looked good, but its attacks were simple and monotonous, so it was easy to avoid. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the embodiment suddenly snorted and said, jumping around like a flea. If you're a man, fight me face to face. Hua Jiyu shouted. Do you think this old man is a fool? How can you say such childish words? Hey! The embodiment grinned. It's not like you'll die if you try. If that's the case, then. As he spoke, he turned his hand over, palm down, and a strange force came out. On the ground, the soil and gravel tumbled as if attracted by some force and quickly rushed to the palm of the embodiment. In the blink of an eye, a spear-like thing appeared in the embodiment's hand. The spear was purely composed of gravel and soil from the bottom of the canyon, but it looked extremely sturdy and indestructible. It was obviously strengthened by the power of the embodiment. With the spear in hand, coupled with the huge body of the embodiment, it looked really majestic and insufferably arrogant. It held the spear, pointed it in the direction where Hua Jiyu was, and stabbed fiercely. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk a sharp sound broke through the air, and a huge vortex appeared in the void. It was a crack torn by a powerful force. This blow seemed to ignore the obstruction of space and directly arrived in front of Hua Jiyu. Hua Gu's eyes widened in horror. He opened his mouth and summoned a shield-like artifact, which turned into a light curtain, blocking in front of him. Asterisk Hong. Asterisk the spear bombarded the light curtain, and the momentum was like a rainbow. It directly shattered the light curtain, and the remaining force hit the rock wall of the canyon. A louder sound came out, and the gravel rustled and fell. A huge circular crater appeared where the spear bombarded. Hua Jiyu was covered in cold sweat, and he hid with a pale face, groaning in the depths of his heart. If he hadn't dodged quickly, this terrifying blow alone would have been enough to crush him. His round shield was a Dao Source-grade mid-rank defensive artifact. It had followed him for countless years and had made great contributions in all kinds of battles. Even a Dao Source-grade high-rank offensive artifact would find it difficult to leave a mark on it. But today, it was shattered by a strange stone giant. A Dao Source-grade mid-rank defensive artifact was no different from paper. The most important thing was that the spear was purely made of soil and gravel, and the whole process of its formation was clearly seen by Hua Jiyu. The opponent's attack was so ridiculous, how could he fight this battle? At this moment, Hua Jiyu couldn't help but want to retreat. At the same time, he was extremely annoyed in his heart. As early as when Kai Yang had appeared, he should have realized that if he were to fight with a disciple from a large sect, he would not be able to gain any benefits. Even if these disciples from large sects were not as strong as him, they would definitely have powerful skills and artifacts bestowed upon them by their elders. None of them could be underestimated. But he was blinded by his own greed and covetousness. Yang Kai's cultivation in the first-order Dao Source realm made him somewhat underestimate him. Now, it was too late to regret. Why is your face so pale? Where's the courage you showed just now? The embodiment's voice came. Hua Jiyu looked over and suddenly, the soles of his feet cramped. He saw the embodiment's hands facing down, and the soil and gravel on the ground were constantly rolling and squirming, quickly forming two spears in his hands. At the same time, Liu Yang and Xiong Ning had already begun fighting. Liu Yang was besieged by these three people and fell into a disadvantage. She was full of anger, so when the embodiment dealt with Hua Jiyu, she found Xiong Ning. Even if Xiong Ning's cultivation was higher than her by a small level, Liu Yang was still evenly matched with him, and even had the upper hand. This time, Liu Yang did not show her true body, only fighting in her human form. In this form, Liu Yang could only exert 80% of her strength. It could be seen that if Liu Yang really let go of her hands and feet and showed her true body, she could definitely suppress Xiong Ning. After all, Liu Yang had swallowed and absorbed so many rare flames of heaven and earth, and the promotion of a weapon spirit was extremely difficult. It was many times more difficult than the promotion of a human cultivator. This kind of special creature like Liu Yang, born in accordance with the destiny of heaven and earth, often had the ability to fight above their level. It was natural that Xiong Ning was not her opponent. Below the canyon, two battlefields were fighting fiercely. Yang Kai didn't move, and neither did Juan. Yang Kai didn't move because he wanted to see what kind of surprise the embodiment was going to give him. At the same time, he wanted to protect Zhong Ruoxi, lest the embodiment's movements were too big and interfere with her cultivation. Chapter 2145. The only reason Juan didn't move was because of Yang Kai. At this moment, Yang Kai's divine sense shrouded the top of his head, like a sharp knife hanging upside down, giving him a horrible illusion that he would be cut into pieces if he made the slightest move. This made his face pale, and he was terrified deep in his heart. He could perceive that Yang Kai's divine sense was so powerful that it was comparable to the third-order Dao Source realm. It was far beyond his own. If he fought with such a person, he would definitely not gain any advantage. Looking at the battlefield, both Hua Jiyu and Xiong Ning seemed to be at a disadvantage. He secretly felt bitter in his heart, knowing that this time he was in big trouble. Quietly glancing at Yang Kai, Juan found that the other party was not paying attention to him. His heart skipped a beat, and he squeezed a smile on his face and cupped his fists. "Friend." Hearing this, Yang Kai turned to look at him and said lightly, "What are your last words?" Juan's mouth twitched, and he said embarrassedly, "Friend, you misunderstood me. I want to tell you that I don't know these two people. I just met them by chance, so I decided to go with them." Yang Kai looked at him indifferently, unmoved. On the other hand, the other two people were shocked when they heard his words. Xiong Ning looked at Juan in disbelief while dodging Liu Yang's killing move, and said, "Brother Ju, what are you talking about?" Huan was also infuriated. He said angrily, "Juan, you still want to stay out of this? Just do it now. That man called you brother." Yang Kai glanced at Xiong Ning while speaking. Juan said seriously, "There is something wrong with his head. Friend, don't listen to his nonsense." He put on a flattering smile. Then he said to Yang Kai, "Friend, I really don't want to harm you. It's just that I was dragged by that man, so I had to come down to investigate. Just now, I had no choice but to attack your artifact spirit. Fortunately, your Excellence's artifact spirit is not damaged, which is a blessing in disguise. Master, I hope you can be magnanimous and forgive me." As soon as he said these shameless words, Yang Kai didn't have time to respond. On the other side, Hua Jiyu was so angry that his face turned red, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He flew into a rage, and blue veins popped out all over his body. He angrily shouted, "Shameless bastard, do you have any sense of shame? Shut up." Juan suddenly shouted at the other side with righteous indignation. Said, "From now on, I have nothing to do with you." Wahahaha. Hua Jiyu was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He let out a strange cry. While he was distracted, the Dharmakaya finally found a flaw. The Dharmakaya stomped on the ground with one foot. He roared, "Draw a circle around the prison." A strange power gushed out from that huge body. All of a sudden, the ground began to flow as if it had turned into liquid. Not only that, but long hands even grew out of the flowing soil and flew into the sky like whips. Hua Jiyu did not notice and was directly entangled by these long whips. "Not good," Hua Jiyu exclaimed. He was about to break free from the shackles of these long whips, but he felt a huge force pulling him from below. His body was pulled down uncontrollably and sank directly into the ground, leaving only his head above the ground. It was strange. The moment Hua Jiyu sank into the ground, the flowing liquid-like earth returned to its original state. Not only that, but it also became impregnable. No matter how Hua Jiyu struggled, he could not break free. He was like a man who had fallen into a swamp, with no way to advance or retreat. He was completely imprisoned. The huge body of the Dharma body stood in front of him like a mountain, blocking all the light in front of him. Oh? New divine technique. Yang Kai's eyes lit up and he was quite surprised. He remembered that the Dharma body did not use this kind of secret technique before. He did not know whether it was the Dharma body himself, or the talent of the Stone Mongoose clan, or the credit of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor. On the other side, Juan's legs and stomach were shaking. Seeing that Hua Jiyu of the Third Order Dao Source Realm was defeated in a short time, how could he dare to continue to stay in place? He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "That's all I have to say, I'll take my leave." As he spoke, he was about to leave this place and drag out an ignoble existence. "Did I say you could leave?" Yang Kai waved his hand and a crescent blade cut in his path. Juan paused, turned around, and said with a smile, "Then I don't know. What other orders do you have?" Although he had adopted a servile attitude, the depths of his eyes were still filled with vigilance. Kai Yang didn't doubt that if he were to attack him, Juan would definitely retaliate in the first instant. A guy like him who could casually betray his own senior and junior brothers probably wouldn't trust anyone. "I don't have any orders," Yang Kai said lightly, "but since you said you're not on the same side as them, you have to do something to prove it, right?" "Do something?" Juan's eyes flickered, but soon, he nodded and said, "I understand, just wait and see, friend." After saying this, he once again summoned his long spear artifact, poured his source chi into it, and the power of law lingered on it. With a leap, he rushed towards the battle circle of Liu Yang and Xiong Ning. As the long spear shook, a halo of light burst out from the tip of the spear. "Chaos Origin Divine Spear," he shouted, his eyes full of murderous intent, and his target was Xiong Ning. Xiong Ning was shocked. Under Liu Yang's attacks, he hadn't been able to gain the upper hand, and Juan's shameless actions had disrupted his concentration. At this moment, he was struggling to hold on, so when Juan suddenly attacked with his spear, he instantly smelled the scent of death. After barely blocking Liu Yang's blow, Xiong Ning shouted, "Brother Ju, are you crazy?" Juan coldly snorted and did not speak. The long spear in his hand suddenly condensed, retracted, and sent out again. When the terrifying attack was a few centimeters away from Xiong Ning, it directly changed direction and blasted towards Liu Yang. "I knew you would do this." Liu Yang panicked but did not panic. He coldly snorted, opened his mouth, and a pillar of fire mixed with the violent power of thunder and lightning rushed forward. Hong. A huge halo of light burst out, drowning the figures of the three people on the battlefield, and did not dissipate for a long time. At the same time, the corners of Yang Kai's mouth rose. A sneer appeared on his face. He clearly saw it. After Juan feinted the spear, he immediately used a secret technique, burning his blood essence. His whole body glowed with a dark red light, as if he was wrapped in a blood mist, and he fled into the depths of the canyon at an extremely fast speed. "Capricious, truly a vile character," Kai Yang praised. If he were in Juan's position, if he wanted to survive, he would not be able to do anything better. However, his feint not only disturbed Liu Yang, but also deceived Xiong Ning. So, after this attack, Xiong Ning was completely dumbfounded. He thought that he was going to die, but when he realized that he was unharmed, Liu Yang rushed towards him again. He could only brace himself and continue to fight. Deep in the canyon, Juan fled frantically. After seeing that Hua Jiyu was imprisoned, he knew that if he did not escape, he would definitely die. No matter what the strange stone giant was, the young man from the First Order Dao Source Realm was definitely not someone he could deal with. He had never seen such a monster. The divine sense strength of the First Order Dao Source Realm cultivator was actually comparable to a Third Order cultivator. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. Juan had always been a flexible character. In the sect, he was good with money. He was good at managing interpersonal relationships. This blood-burning technique consumed a lot of his body, but it could increase his speed by 50% for a short time. He was confident that no matter how strong Yang Kai was, it was impossible for him to catch up to him. But, just as this thought flashed through his mind, a ripple appeared in the void in front of him. A clear fluctuation of space force came from there. Juan was taken aback and looked forward suspiciously. He saw a figure slowly walking out of the void, staring at him with a playful gaze. "You!" Juan's eyes widened as he looked at Yang Kai in disbelief. He exclaimed, "How is this possible?" However, he was also very knowledgeable. He immediately thought of something and said in horror, "The space divine technique?" Juan could not find a second explanation for the scene in front of him except for the legendary teleportation secret technique performed by a cultivator who had mastered the Tao of space. Although there were some special artifacts that could penetrate the void and do similar things, Juan did not see any signs of Yang Kai using such artifacts. He immediately understood that the guy in front of him was a cultivator who had mastered the Tao of space. After figuring this out, Juan's face turned ashen. As long as one had a brain, one would not run away from someone who was proficient in the Tao of space. It was just a waste of energy. At this moment, Juan's mouth was stuffed with bitterness. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. Yang Kai directly interrupted him. "I'll take whatever you say as a fart." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Kai waved his hand and dozens of moon blades shot out crazily. Juan's heart sank to the bottom. He waved the long spear in his hand and spun it in front of him to block the attacks. With a series of clanking sounds, although the moon blades were blocked, Juan was forced to retreat again and again. Before he could stabilize his body, Yang Kai suddenly disappeared in front of him. Juan was shocked and quickly released his divine sense, but he could not find any trace of Yang Kai. He instinctively turned around and stabbed his spear, but he hit nothing. There was no one there. A voice that made his hair stand on end came from behind his head, like the summons of the Grim Reaper, Million Sword Chi, chasing Moon Swallows the Wolf. A sensational sword intent filled the air, and the boundless sword Chi slashed down. The dark canyon was instantly lit up as if it was daytime. At this moment, Juan felt as if he was being assisted by a god. He shouted and rose to block, using everything he had learned in his life. His source Chi madly poured into the long spear in his hand, and thousands of spear shadows appeared. Violent energy sputtered in the void, and the power of the ultimate move burst out in all directions. Muffled groans could be heard, and blood splashed. After the dazzling white light dissipated, Yang Kai stood quietly with the myriad sword in his hand. Not far away, Juan was covered in blood, and his body was covered in wounds. His flesh was torn, and his bones were exposed. His clothes were tattered, and the burning red light outside his body had disappeared. His aura was so weak that it was almost undetectable. He turned his eyes with difficulty and fixed his gaze on the myriad sword in Yang Kai's hand. The corners of his mouth curled up as he said bitterly, "Emperor, treasure, this Jew's death was not unjust." As soon as he finished speaking, he fell straight to the ground. In midair, his eyes quickly lost their light. Chapter 2146. By the time Yang Kai returned, the battle between Liu Yang and Xiong Ning had already ended, and the result was as expected. Liu Yang won. However, she did not kill Xiong Ning, but instead crippled him and threw him to the ground. Xiong Ning's aura was weak, and he was constantly groaning and screaming, looking very miserable. On the other side, Hua Jiyu was still imprisoned in the ground, only his head was exposed. The embodiment was sitting cross-legged in front of him, its huge hands stretched out like two giant claws, grabbing towards Hua Gu's position. A magical power came from the two giant hands. Under the influence of this power, the source Qi in Hua Gu's body, and even the essence of his flesh and blood, were all turned into pure world energy and poured into the embodiment's body, being absorbed by it. Seeing this scene, Yang Kai's eyes narrowed slightly. "Master." Liu Yang came over, her beautiful eyes filled with horror, and asked in a low voice, "What secret art is this?" She was also frightened by the embodiment's actions. Although Hua Jiyu and the other two's actions were despicable and vile, what the embodiment was doing at this moment seemed to be extracting the essence and strength of Hua Gu's body and transforming it into his own strength. With the embodiment's actions, Hua Gu's body quickly shriveled, like a fruit that had lost its moisture. His skin cracked, and his face became sallow. His cultivation realm in the third-order Dao Source realm was also weakening at an extremely terrifying speed. This kind of despair and torment before death was far more terrifying than being torn into pieces. Heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique. Yang Kai replied in a low voice. He was also a little surprised. He did not expect the embodiment to cultivate the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique to this extent. The scene in front of him was somewhat familiar, back in the Blue Feather Sect's bone prison. When he released Wu Mengchuan. Wu Mengchuan used the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique to devour all the other cultivator in the bone prison, causing those cultivators to die an unnatural death, thus restoring him to his peak state in a very short time. The embodiment obviously could not achieve the level of Wu Mengchuan, but the nature was the same, absorbing the strength of others to strengthen himself. Heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique. It could devour all spiritual things in the world, and cultivate to the extreme. It was extremely overbearing and unstoppable. The heaven-devouring Great Emperors cultivated this battle technique, precisely because of this secret art, it provoked the public anger, and laid the groundwork for their own destruction. This secret art is too overbearing and evil. Liu Yang frowned, seemingly a little displeased. Yang Kai nodded lightly in agreement. After witnessing the scene in front of him, he had to admit that this was an extremely evil and overbearing technique. While the two of them were talking, Hua Jiyu had already lost his vitality. His whole body was just skin and bones. It seemed that even his flesh and blood had disappeared. But the embodiment, the time. Tragic cries rang out, echoing throughout the canyon for a long time. After a while, Xiongning also became a mummified existence. Only then did the embodiment breathe a sigh of satisfaction. Yang Kai clearly felt that after using the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique to devour all the cultivation of the two Dao Source Realm cultivators, the embodiment's aura had become much stronger. His originally clear eyes flashed with a strange light at this moment. Through the connection of his divine sense, Yang Kai faintly felt that the wisp of soul clone living in the embodiment's body had become a little different. A strange aura lingered in it. This secret art, you didn't cultivate it back then. It was a wise decision, the embodiment said in a muffled voice. What do you mean? Yang Kai raised his brow. The embodiment said, before, I was just absorbing the essence of various minerals, so I didn't notice anything. I only felt that this secret art was extremely powerful, and my strength improved quickly when cultivating it, but now, something is affecting my soul, making me involuntarily bloodthirsty. I want to kill and devour more. As he spoke, his eyes flashed with a faint red light. Are you addicted? Yang Kai touched his chin and muttered to himself. The embodiment shook his head and said, that's not the point. The point is that when using this secret art to devour energy, it will also devour some other things, which will affect my soul. I understand. Yang Kai nodded and asked again, so now I'm fine. The embodiment waved his hand. I speculate that the other things being devoured should be the remnant thoughts of the dead cultivators, or the panic and anger before their deaths. If you were to absorb these things, it would be extremely difficult to dissolve them, but I'm different. At this point, the embodiment grinned and patted his body, proudly saying, this is the body of the Stone Mongoose clan, which can naturally purify impurities. I think. I just need to rest for a while, and I'll be fine. Then there's no time to lose. Come back first. Yang Kai said and took the sealed world bead from Liu Yang's hand. With a thought, he put the embodiment into it. Will the big guy be okay? Liu Yang asked worriedly. No, the physique of the Stone Mongoose clan is very special. However, before he completely purifies the things that affect his soul, he shouldn't be able to use the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's secret art to devour energy anymore, Yang Kai replied. However, after this, he somewhat understood why the heaven-devouring Great Emperor had reached the end of his path when he was at the peak. It seemed that it wasn't just his practice of devouring everything that had aroused the disgust of others, but also his change in temperament. Think about it, such a powerful cultivator would only think about devouring this and devouring that all day long. No one would feel safe. Moreover, at the level of the heaven-devouring Great Emperor, only other Great Emperors could interest him in devouring. Even if it was for self-preservation, the other Great Emperors would have to join forces to eliminate him. Yang Kai thought for a moment, then suddenly turned his head and looked to the side, saying in surprise, she's about to break through? He suddenly found that there was an unusual energy fluctuation coming from Zhong Ruoshi's side. It was a sign that she was about to break through. Without needing his instructions, Liu Yang took back the Luanfeng feather. The little girl's physique is a little strange. Liu Yang's face, on the other hand, turned pale. She didn't know why, but she felt a fatal threat from this phantom, a kind of panic that came from the depths of her heart, making her want to get as far away from it as possible. At this moment, the silhouette of the figure was revealed. It looked like a woman that had been magnified countless times. She was wearing armor, and her cape was fluttering behind her. Her hands were crossed, and she was standing on the hilt of a huge sword. The woman's figure was curvaceous, valiant, and her hair fluttered in the wind. The appearance of this phantom couldn't be seen clearly, only a rough outline. It was unstable and constantly distorted, but it was somewhat similar to Zhong Ruoshi, as if the projection of her in that outfit had been enlarged. Chapter 2147. As soon as this huge phantom appeared, it slowly raised its head and glanced at the surging world energy gathering in the sky. Immediately, it opened its mouth and sucked fiercely. What happened next was a shocking scene. Under her suction, the world energy that was supposed to affect Zhongruo Shi was sucked into her stomach and disappear. After doing all this, the woman's phantom lowered its head and suddenly shrank into Zhongruo Shi's body and disappeared. But before she left, Yang Kai faintly felt that she seemed to be looking down at him. Even without meeting the other party's eyes, Yang Kai was inexplicably horrified and felt a sense of inferiority. What was that? Liu Yang's voice trembled a little. Although the strange phantom had disappeared, the fear it brought to her didn't diminish. It made her shiver all over. Yang Kai shook his head numbly. Hong. A halo of energy suddenly burst out with Zhongruo Shi as the center and radiated in all directions. After the phantom shrank into her body, she directly broke through to the origin returning realm without any hindrance. It could even be said that it was a matter of course. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. Whether it was Zhongruo Shi directly condensing her shi, or the appearance of the strange phantom, or her sudden breakthrough, it was all beyond his comprehension. All of this seemed so unreal. At this moment, there was only one thought lingering in his mind. What kind of bloodline did Zhongruo Shi inherit? Was that phantom the projection of the Zhong family's ancestors' will? Master, I want to go back first, Liu Yang suddenly said. Yang Kai glanced at her. Noticing that her state was a little strange, he didn't force her. He nodded and put her into the sealed world bead. Zhongruo Shi, who had broken through to the Dao Source realm, showed no signs of stopping. She was still madly devouring the surrounding world energy. At this moment, she had become a bottomless pit. No matter how much world energy there was, she could absorb it all. Coupled with the absorption of the sealed world bead, the world energy sea below the canyon became thin at an extremely fast rate. One day later, the originally cloudy and misty canyon was no longer the same as before. The world energy sea was also gone, becoming the same as the rest of the Four Seasons realm. It was not until then that Zhongruo Shi let out a moan and slowly opened her eyes. She seemed to be a little confused about the changes in her body. After opening her eyes, she frowned slightly, spread her hands in front of her, and slightly clenched them. After a while, she came back to her senses and noticed that someone was watching her. She raised her head and met Yang Kai's gaze. Sir. Zhongruo Shi got up. He called out softly. Congratulations, Zhongruo Shi, Zhongruo Shi, Zhongruo Shi. Zhongruo Shi pursed her lips and said, I don't know what happened. I feel like I just fell asleep and became like this. Slept. Yang Kai raised his brow. So, you don't know anything about what happened before? Zhongruo Shi raised her head and asked in amazement, what happened? She turned her head and looked around, only to find two shriveled corpses. She screamed in fright and her face turned pale. Did someone attack us? Zhongruo Shi asked in fear. Yang Kai smiled bitterly and shook his head. He didn't know how to explain the abnormal scene to her, so he just said, a few guys who didn't know the difference between life and death. However, Zhongruo Shi's reaction made him have some guesses. It was rumored that some powerful exotic beasts, especially those holy spirits, were born with great strength. Furthermore, they didn't need to cultivate too hard to increase their strength. They only needed to wait for the accumulation of time, and the bloodline power in their bodies would slowly awaken. They would slowly grow, and in the end, they would stand at the peak of this world. Zhongruo Shi's situation was somewhat similar to these monster beast and divine spirit inheritances. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain how her strength had improved so much in just 2 days without her noticing. Thinking of this, Yang Kai asked, Ruo Shi, has anyone ever explained to you how to break through to the origin returning realm and condense one's shi? No. Zhongruo Shi shook her head. When I was at home, Ruo Shi's strength was still very low. Old ancestor told me to wait until I reached the Third Order Saint King realm before explaining these things to me. Yang Kai nodded after hearing this. He remembered that he had never told Zhongruo Shi about these things either. Breaking through to the origin returning realm wasn't a big deal. Even if she didn't understand it, she could still explore it on her own and improvise. However, the condensation of Shi wasn't something that could be grasped overnight, yet Zhongruo she was able to condense her Shi in one fell swoop. In other words, the method to condense Shi was deeply rooted in her soul. This was definitely because of her bloodline inheritance. Sir, is there a problem with Ruo Shi's cultivation? Zhongruo she asked uneasily. No, there's no such thing. Yang Kai quickly shook his head to prevent her from misunderstanding, pausing for a moment before continuing. You just broke through, so consolidating your cultivation is more important. Go back to the sealed world bead first. Yes. Zhongruo she nodded meekly, relaxing her body and mind, allowing Yang Kai to put her into the sealed world bead. Standing in place and pondering for a while, Yang Kai still couldn't figure out the situation. He didn't ask Zhongruo Shi about the huge woman phantom just now because she probably wouldn't be able to give him an answer. After a while, he turned his head and looked to the side. Not far away, a stream of light was quickly approaching. After a while, Hua Qing Sai appeared in front of him with a happy look on her face. Obviously, her harvest was not small. What happened? Hua Qing Sai asked in shock when she saw the two dried corpses on the ground. Someone was looking for trouble. Yang Kai explained lightly. He didn't ask her what she had gained. After all, they had agreed before that she would keep all her gains. He just said, "You come back first, I have to rush to the winter territory." Wait a minute. What is it? Hua Qing Sai pursed her lips and smiled. I suddenly remembered something on the way back. Yang Kai didn't answer. He just motioned with his eyes for her to continue. There is a hidden treasure in the Two Seasons mountain range. Are you interested in exploring it? Hua Qing Sai asked with a smile. How do you know? Yang Kai asked in surprise. Hua Qing Sai said, I am a member of the Star Soul Palace. If nothing unexpected happens, I will be one of the 40 spots in the Star Soul Palace this time. I have been preparing for the Four Seasons realm for a long time. What's so strange about knowing a hidden treasure? The Two Seasons mountain range? Yang Kai showed a thoughtful look. Don't worry, although I don't know what you are going to do in the winter territory, it's just on the way. It won't take long. Do you have the exact location? Yang Kai asked. Hua Qing Sai couldn't help but roll her eyes. She said, the hidden treasure is just some clues I found from the ancient records of the sect. Although there is a map, the direction is not very clear. It only outlines a general area. If you really want to go, you have to find it yourself. So, you don't know what's inside? Yang Kai asked. Hua Qing Sai looked at his reluctant appearance and couldn't help but curl her lips. It seems. You don't know much about the Four Seasons realm. Why do you say that? Yang Kai frowned. Hua Qing Sai giggled. Do you know who gave birth to the Four Seasons realm? Do you know? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. Hua Qing Sai said proudly, if I don't know, why would I ask you? Yang Kai suddenly grinned. Speak. Seeing his threatening look, Hua Qing Sai couldn't help but pout. Flowing Time Great Emperor, Great Emperors, have you heard of them? Yang Kai shook his head. Hua Qing Sai's expression froze. She said, since ancient times. Those who are qualified to be called Great Emperors are all the top masters in the world. However, even if they are the top, there is still the possibility of falling. In historical records, there are at least dozens of Great Emperors who have fallen, and the Flowing Time Great Emperor is one of them. The divine art that this Great Emperor cultivates is called the Flowing Time Great Emperor Divine Art. Once the Flowing Time Great Emperor's divine technique is used, 1,000 years will pass in an instant. Those who are hit will silently lose their lifespan. Naturally, they will die. No one knows how these Great Emperors fell, but it is rumored that the Four Seasons realm is a secret cave of the Flowing Time Great Emperor. The power of the Four Seasons in the secret territory is also manifested by the Flowing Time Great Emperor's divine technique, and it has not dissipated for countless years. It is also rumored that somewhere in the Four Seasons realm, there is a majestic temple called the Flowing Time Temple, which contains endless benefits left behind by the Flowing Time Great Emperor Great Emperors. If one can get one or two of them, their future prospects will be smooth and there will be no more obstacles. This rumor has been circulating among the great sects, but unfortunately, no one can prove it, only some vague records. The secret territory I mentioned is most likely related to the flowing time temple. She proudly described it, and sure enough, it aroused Yang Kai's interest. But if you don't want to go, then don't go, Hua Qingsai said, trying to whet Yang Kai's appetite. Yang Kai decisively reached out to her. What are you doing? Hua Qingsai asked vigilantly. Give me the map. Hua Qingsai immediately covered her space ring, jumped back a few steps, and gritted her teeth. I'm warning you, if you dare to use force, I will. You will what? Yang Kai approached her with a grin. This place is deserted, even if you shout until your throat is hoarse, no one will come to save you. Besides, as soon as I give the order, you will have to obediently hand over the map. You're shameless, you beast. Don't come any closer. If you come any closer, I'll scream. Fine, I'll give it to you. Hua Qingsai took out a piece of animal skin from her space ring and threw it to Yang Kai as she angrily said, What's so interesting about this? A big man bullying a weak woman like me, don't you have any shame? Yang Kai ignored her and just looked at the simple map drawn on the animal skin in his hand. He found that, as Hua Qingsai said, there were not many clues on the map, and the direction was unclear. Chapter 2148. The entire Four Seasons realm was divided into four major territory: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The environment was different and the climate was complex. The location of the junction of each territory was particularly strange. As for the Two Seasons Mountain, it ran through the entire Four Seasons realm, like a continuous line that divided the territory of the four regions that were close together. Yang Kai had seen this information from the Jade Slip, so when Hua Qingsai mentioned the Two Seasons Mountain, he was not too surprised. However, from the information revealed by Hua Qingsai, Azure Sun Temple was still hiding something from him. At the very least, they did not share the information about the Flowing Time Temple with him. This was to be expected. After all, he was just an outsider. Murong Xiao Xiao gave him the Jade Slip that recorded most of the information about the Four Seasons realm. He was afraid that Jiao Xueting had tacitly agreed to it. Any more and it would be leaking the sect's secrets. However, Yang Kai was sure that the people of Azure Sun Temple should know about the Flowing Time Temple if the Flowing Time Temple really existed. On the map that Hua Qingsai gave to Yang Kai, the location of the Flowing Time Temple was recorded in the Two Seasons Mountain between the Summer Territory and the Winter Territory, so for Yang Kai, this trip was really just on the way. He put away the map and let Hua Qingsai hide in the sealed world bead. He then summoned his wooden boat and rushed all the way in the direction of the Winter Territory. A day passed in a hurry, and a continuous mountain range suddenly appeared in front of him. Looking from a distance, the mountain forest was verdant and lush. The side facing him was scorching hot, but the top of the mountain was covered in silver and white snow. On the other side of the mountain range that Yang Kai could not see. It must be an extremely cold world. This was obviously the Two Seasons Mountain. Yang Kai did not hesitate too much. While releasing his divine sense to check the surrounding situation, he directly plunged in. In the jungle, the climate was sultry, but for a cultivator like Yang Kai, it would not affect him much. He memorized the information recorded in the map in his mind and began to search for the Flowing Time Temple without deviating from the direction of the Winter Territory. He thought very clearly. Since the existence of the Flowing Time Temple was elusive and almost no one had found it during the opening of the Four Seasons realm, he naturally could not have too much hope, lest he waste of energy and time. For him, it would be good if he could find it. But if he could not find it, then he could directly cross the Two Seasons Mountain and enter the Winter Territory. The Tribulation Fruit was the biggest goal of his trip. With this kind of mentality, Yang Kai was relaxed. He controlled the wooden boat to fly at a low altitude. In this mountain forest, there seemed to be some traces of monster beasts, but they weren't too strong. Yang Kai wasn't in the mood to find trouble with them, so he just ignored them. Occasionally, one or two rare medicinal herbs could be found. They were all carefully collected by Yang Kai. He transplanted them to the medicine garden in the small sealed world. Half a day passed in a flash. Although he did not find any trace of the flowing time temple, it was not without gains. At a certain moment, just as Yang Kai was flying at a low altitude and investigating his surroundings, his expression suddenly changed and he looked up in a certain direction. On the other side, a series of rustling noises could be heard from a distance, as if something was fleeing, but because of the forest's obstruction, Yang Kai couldn't see it clearly. He released his divine sense. He immediately noticed an aura equivalent to a second-order Tao source realm coming from that direction. But at this moment, the owner of this aura seemed to have been seriously injured, and its energy fluctuations were extremely unstable. Just as Yang Kai was investigating, a monster beast suddenly leaped out of the jungle in front of him. This monster beast looked like a lizard that had been magnified dozens of times. It had a pointy head and a long body, but it had 2 fiery red wings on its back. There was a diamond-shaped mark on its head, as if it had been branded with a soldering iron. It looked extremely strange. It was unknown who it had fought a life-and-death battle with. At this moment, one of the wings on its back had been chopped off, and its tail was nowhere to be found. Its entire body was dripping with blood with countless wounds, and its flesh and blood were overturned. It leapt towards Yang Kai in a panic, not expecting that Yang Kai would block its path. In the blink of an eye, the giant lizard's eyes turned red as it opened its mouth and launched an attack towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai only saw a flash of scarlet light before a sharp wave of energy rushed towards him. He could clearly see that the giant lizard's attack was actually its long tongue. That scarlet tongue was straight like a sharp sword, incomparably sharp. In a hurry, Yang Kai's figure flickered and dodged, causing the long tongue attack to hit empty air. At the same time, he flicked his wrist and shot a dozen moonblades at the giant lizard. The giant lizard was in mid-air, so it could not dodge, so the moonblades directly cut its body. However, this giant lizard's body was quite sturdy, and Yang Kai's hasty moonblade was unable to kill it immediately. Instead, it only managed to create a few sparks on its body, causing it some minor injuries. Using the force of the slashes, the giant lizard fell straight down. Yang Kai's expression turned cold. He condensed his body and took a step forward. Like a meteor falling from the sky, he arrived above the giant lizard's head. In the next moment, he directly used his dragon transformation secret technique. His right fist turned into a dragon claw, clenched tightly, and smashed towards the back of the giant lizard's head. Hong, with a loud bang, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, the giant lizard's body suddenly bent at a right angle from its neck. Its scarlet tongue stuck out, and its eyes were bloodshot. Its body twitched and struggled, but it was still unable to reverse its fate of death. With a thud, the giant lizard's corpse fell to the ground, and Yang Kai landed lightly beside it. This giant lizard was an 11th order monster beast, comparable to a second-order Tao source realm cultivator. If it had not been seriously injured before, Yang Kai would not have been able to kill it in such a short time. It did not look like a rare monster beast, but with its level, its monster core should be quite valuable. Thinking so, Yang Kai bent down and prepared to take out its monster core. But at that moment, something strange happened. The diamond-shaped brand on the giant lizard's forehead suddenly rotated, as if it had a life of its own. Then, it turned into a stream of light and directly left the giant lizard's forehead, rushing towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai was shocked. With a tap of his foot, he hurriedly retreated. He thought that the giant lizard had been blown up and used some kind of strange method. After all, an 11th order monster beast had a high level of intelligence, so it was completely possible for it to play such tricks. His movements were fast, but the stream of light was faster. Yang Kai was unable to avoid it. The stream of light instantly broke through his source chi protection, circled around his body, and then fell on the back of his hand. What the hell? Yang Kai's face was aghast as he exclaimed. The moment the stream of light fell on the back of his hand, he felt a burning pain on the back of his hand. It was as if there was really a soldering iron burning his hand, causing him to retreat in panic. But soon, he found that he was overthinking things. The pain only lasted for a moment, and after a breath, it disappeared. Instead, it became cold and comfortable. Looking down, Yang Kai immediately found that on the back of his right hand, there was a diamond mark. There was actually an additional diamond-shaped mark, which was exactly the same as the one he saw on the giant lizard's forehead. Whoosh whoosh, in the next moment, several figures suddenly appeared not far from young Kai. When these people appeared, they all cast their gazes towards the giant lizard's corpse on the ground. Then, they looked up at young Kai with an unfriendly expression. Young Kai was also shocked. When he noticed that the giant lizard was severely injured, he vaguely guessed that there were probably people chasing after it. However, he was distracted by this brand, so he did not notice when these people approached him. Now, he realized. It was too late. It's you. It's you. Among the cultivator looking at young Kai, there were two exclamations, but the tone was not quite the same. Young Kai looked up and suddenly felt a headache, because he suddenly realized that the situation in front of him was slightly complicated. The cultivator chasing after the giant lizard was not from the same force, but was divided into 4 groups. Among the 4 groups of people, he knew half of them. The group on the left was Xiao Bai Yi and Murong Xiao Xiao from Azure Sun Temple. He did not know if the two of them had always been together or if they met by chance. Anyway, when they were chased by the flame beasts in the territory of summer, the two should have separated. At this moment, they appeared together in the Two Seasons mountain range. At this moment, Xiao Bai Yi looked at young Kai indifferently. His expression was indifferent as usual. On the other hand, Murong Xiao Xiao smiled sweetly at young Kai. Next to these two was Heavenly Marshal Holy Land's yin-yang twin body, Wu Chang. Young Kai's memory of this guy was still fresh in his mind. After witnessing the battle between him and Xia Sheng, young Kai secretly decided that unless it was absolutely necessary, he would absolutely not have any disputes with this person. It wasn't that he was afraid of him, but rather that this guy was very difficult to deal with. Young Kai knew that if he wanted to defeat him, he would probably have to use all of his means, and even then, he might not necessarily be able to kill him. On Heavenly Marshal Holy Land's side, there was only Wu Chang. This was not surprising. Wu Chang had a violent personality and acted strangely. Even his brothers and sisters from the same sect would not have an easy time getting along with him. The disciples of Heavenly Marshal Holy Land probably did not want to or dare to be with him, and Wu Chang preferred to act alone. To him, everyone was a burden. The third group consisted of 2 people, a man and a woman. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. The former had the cultivation of the third-order Dao Source realm, while the latter was only first-order. Yang Kai didn't know who these two were, but what made him feel strange was that the third-order Dao Source realm man had a slightly gloomy look in his eyes when he looked at him, while the woman had a smile on her face. Judging from the patterns on the clothes worn by the two, this man and woman were disciples of Star Soul Palace. They should not be underestimated. The last group, like Wu Chang, was all alone. Yang Kai glanced at him and found that this guy did not come from a great sect. The sect logo on his clothes was also extremely unfamiliar, so he should be from some medium-sized or even small force. However, this guy showed no fear when facing the elite disciples of the 3 great sects. His expression was extremely calm, which was quite surprising. Chapter 2149. Does this girl know me? Yang Kai glanced around and saw all 4 groups of people, then asked the female disciple from Star Soul Palace suspiciously. Because of the 2 sentences that were shouted just now, one of them was shouted by Xiao Bai Yi, while the other was shouted by this girl. If they didn't know each other, how could she shout out such things? However, what Yang Kai did not expect was that the female disciple from Star Soul Palace smiled slightly, shook her head, and said, "You've got the wrong person." Lan Zun said this because although she remembered Yang Kai's appearance, Yang Kai did not recognize her. That time in the 3rd layer of the 5-colored treasure pagoda, Lan Zun used the false appearance bead to change her appearance, so what Yang Kai saw was not her current appearance. Ah! Yang Kai was speechless and turned to Xiao Bai Yi. "Xiao Bai, you're here too, it's a small world." The veins on Xiao Bai Yi's forehead throbbed as he shouted, "Do you want to die?" Murong Xiao Xiao pursed her lips and smiled, nodding slightly to Yang Kai. Yang Kai said, "Why are you so cold? It's rare for us to meet here, it's fate." Xiao Bai Yi coldly snorted, "Who's fated with you?" However, You were able to escape the pursuit of that flame beast alive. It's really a bit surprising. Although he was praising him, his tone was full of ridicule, and no one knew why. At that time, the flame beast from the realm of summer seemed to have gone crazy. So many people had fled in all directions, but it had chosen to target Yang Kai. Many people thought that Yang Kai was doomed, and Xiao Baiyi also thought so. After all, even Wu Chang was chased away. How could Yang Kai, a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, possibly survive? However, the truth was shocking. Yang Kai appeared in the Two Seasons mountain range unscathed. The man and woman from Star Soul Palace's expressions changed slightly when they heard the two words flame beast. It was obvious that they knew about the existence of the monster beast that was comparable to the one in the Emperor realm. Wu Chang raised his eyebrows and revealed a look of surprise. He could not understand how such a weak cultivator could escape the pursuit of the flame beast. The previous matter. If it weren't for the Azure Sun Temples group attracting the flame beast's attention, he would have been in big trouble. You flatter me, Yang Kai said modestly. Escaping is my strong suit. Yang Kai's unashamed look made Xiao Baiyi stare at him for a while. Let's cut the crap. At that moment, the young man in blue robes, who seemed to be from some unknown sect, suddenly shouted coldly and shouted at Yang Kai, "Hand over your star seal and we'll spare your life." As long as Kai Yang cooperated with him, he would let Kai Yang off the hook. His tone and demeanor were like a matter of fact. Yang Kai couldn't help but glance at him. The other party just looked at him coldly, without any intention of avoiding his gaze. The two from Star Soul Palace did not speak. The handsome man just frowned, seemingly a little displeased, while the woman turned her beautiful eyes with interest, as if she was waiting for a good show to begin. Although it's a little redundant. But I still want to ask, how should I address your excellency? Yang Kai looked at the young man in black with a smile. He did not seem angry at all. While speaking, he had already contacted the small sealed world bead with his divine sense and asked Hua Qing Sai to help him identify the man and woman from Star Soul Palace. After all, Star Soul Palace was her sect, so she should recognize these two. The young man in black heard this and coldly snorted, "Octagonal door, Luo Yuan. So it's Brother Luo, it's an honor to meet you." Yang Kai showed a look of surprise, as if he had really heard of Luo Yuan's name. In fact, this was the first time he had heard of the octagonal door. The look of contempt on Xiao Baiyi's face became even stronger as he snorted, "Fortunately, you are not a disciple of my Azure Sun Temple, otherwise, I would have already cleaned up the sec." "Ha ha." Yang Kai laughed, but suddenly, his face changed slightly. At this time, he had already received the answer from Hua Qing Sai from the embodiment, but what he did not expect was that the man and woman from Star Soul Palace were both people with great backgrounds. The man was Xiao Yuyang's son, Xiao Chen. Yang Kai knew about Xiao Yuyang, a powerful second-order Emperor Realm Master and the Silver Star Envoy of Star Soul Palace, famous throughout the Southern Territory. It should be said that a tiger father would not beget a dog son. Xiao Yuyang was powerful and respected, and his son was not mediocre either. Together with Wu Chang, Xia Sheng, Zhuang Biyu Fan, and others, they were all rising stars in the Southern Territory and had made a name for themselves at a young age. Xiao Chen was one thing, but the woman's background was even more frightening. She was actually the beloved daughter of the Bright Moon Great Emperors, Princess Lan Xun. She was the most desired target for young unmarried men in the entire Southern Territory and even the entire star boundary. If such a woman could be taken in, it would save them at least a few hundred years of hard work. With a father-in-law like the Bright Moon Great Emperors, wouldn't they be able to walk sideways in the entire star boundary? Who would dare to provoke them? However, although Princess Lan Xun's reputation was great, she rarely went out, so basically, outsiders couldn't see her. Yang Kai didn't expect that with her identity and status, she would come to the Four Seasons realm for life experience. Moreover, she came in with the same cultivation as him. Were the Bright Moon Great Emperors not afraid that his precious daughter would have an accident in the Four Seasons realm? Thinking so, Yang Kai glanced at Xiao Chen again. With this flower guardian, Lan Xun should not be allowed to take any risks. These thoughts flashed through Yang Kai's mind like lightning. Although everyone saw that his expression was strange, They did not know what he was thinking. They only thought that he was frightened by Xiao Baiyi's words and could not help but despise him. Yang Kai lowered his head, looked at the diamond-shaped brand on the back of his hand, and muttered to himself, "This really is a star seal." Just now, he had a faint guess in his heart that this was most likely a voucher to enter the Shattered Star Sea, but before he could finish this thought, Wu Chang and the others appeared, giving him no chance to verify it. Luo Yuan's words undoubtedly confirmed his conjecture. The star seal actually appeared on the forehead of a monster beast, and after being killed by Yang Kai, it was transferred to his hand in such an obvious position on the back of his hand. This made it impossible for Yang Kai not to cause trouble. Yang Kai's heart moved, and he turned to Wu Chang and said, "Brother Wu Chang, with a hero like you here, is it really okay to let a guy from a small sect act so arrogant and presumptuous? If word of this spreads out, what will happen to Brother Wu Chang's reputation?" Wu Chang looked at Yang Kai indifferently, unmoved. Although he had a strange temper and a violent personality, since he had cultivated to the level of the third-order Dao Source realm, he was naturally not a fool. How could he easily let Yang Kai cause trouble? He just coldly snorted and said, "Although I don't like this guy's arrogance, what he said does make sense. Hand over the star seal, otherwise I'll take it myself." Hearing this, Yang Kai couldn't help scratching his head and said awkwardly, "The two of you are saying that you want to take it by force." At this point, he looked up at Lan Zun and Xiao Chen and asked, "Will Star Soul Palace intervene in this matter?" Lan Zun smiled slightly and said, "I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. I can only promise not to steal it from you." Xiao Chen didn't speak. He just coldly snorted, and the disdain in his eyes became even stronger. He couldn't understand why Princess Lanxuan seemed to care about such a guy. Moreover, the words he blurted out just now made him realize some problems. With Lan Zun's words, Yang Kai sighed helplessly and said, "If possible, I would be happy to hand over this star seal, but I don't know what to do to make the star seal leave the back of my hand. Do you two have any advice?" "Simple." Wu Chang immediately replied, his tone calm, "Just cut off your hand, that's all." "Good." Luo Yuan also nodded and said, "Your hand or your life, choose for yourself." Yang Kai's face turned pale with fright as he stammered, I want both. Is there any other way to do it safely?" Luo Yuan coldly snorted and said, "How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? It seems that you don't want either of them. Since that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish." Having said so, he pushed his source chi and took a step forward, instantly breaking through the barrier of space and arriving in front of Yang Kai. A golden light condensed on his palm and he slammed it towards Yang Kai's chest. At the same time, Wu Chang also moved. Now that the star seal was on the back of the hand of a nobody like Yang Kai, whoever struck first would get it. With Wu Chang's arrogant temperament, how could he allow Luo Yuan to monopolize the benefits? As such, he also arrived behind Yang Kai at once, his palm suddenly becoming crystal clear, as if it was carved from white jade, and containing an extremely cold power, he slammed it towards Yang Kai's back. The two masters from the third-order Dao Source realm showed no mercy, each of them filled with murderous intent, only daring to kill Yang Kai in front of the other. After all, the transfer of the star seal would be transferred to the person who killed the carrier. Junior brother Yang. Murong Xiao Xiao's pretty face suddenly turned pale as she exclaimed, "Dodge." Xiao Baiyi frowned, not having expected that Wu Chang and that guy named Luo Yuan would suddenly attack without warning, their ferocity becoming second nature. Although he didn't like Yang Kai and had even threatened to teach him a lesson in the Four Seasons realm, Yang Kai had entered the Four Seasons realm with the people from Azure Sun Temple and occupied one of their spots, so any excess star seals he obtained would have to be handed over to the temple. In any case, Xiao Baiyi couldn't sit back and watch Yang Kai be killed. Otherwise, he would not be able to get away with it when the matter was investigated. Yang Kai's death was a small matter, but interfering with the interests of the sect was a big matter. Unfortunately, it was already too late for him to take action. On the other side, Lan Zun's pretty face also changed slightly, a look of reluctance appearing in her eyes. In her opinion, Yang Kai was definitely dead this time, but it was impossible for her to save Yang Kai as doing so was tantamount to offending Wu Chang. Overconfident. Xiao Chen snorted coldly as he watched coldly. Hong, with a loud explosion, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan, who were sandwiching Yang Kai from the front and back, were both stunned at this moment. Both of them felt a huge force and energy impact coming from the front at the same time, causing them to involuntarily be knocked back several dozen meters before they could stabilize themselves. Chapter 2150. Somewhere in the Two Seasons mountain range, the atmosphere was tense. Both Luo Yuan and Wu Chang looked stunned as they stared ahead. Xiao Baiyi and Murong Xiao also widened their eyes, somewhat unable to believe what they were seeing. On the other side, Lan Zun's beautiful eyes flashed with surprise. Xiao Chen even whispered, "What's going on?" Just now, Luo Yuan and Wu Chang attacked Yang Kai at the same time, and everyone thought that Yang Kai would die. Regardless of whether the arrogant and domineering Luo Yuan was an embroidered pillow or really had the capital to be proud of, Wu Chang alone was not an ordinary Dao Source Realm master. He was notorious for his cruelty, so how could anyone he targeted have a good end? These two attacked at the same time, one in front and one behind. Without any warning, Yang Kai had no way to avoid them. Everyone could almost imagine the tragic scene of Yang Kai dying in front of them, but the result was that Luo Yuan and Wu Chang, who attacked, were pushed back while Yang Kai showed no signs of injury at all. How did he do it? Looking over again, Yang Kai was still standing in place, motionless, but his face was pale and his expression was flustered, as if he had been scared out of his wits. His body was trembling slightly and his forehead was sweating. Although he cut a sorry figure, he was completely unscathed. This boy, what did he do just now? Xiao Chen was a little confused. It was impossible for Luo Yuan and Wu Chang to be pushed back for no reason, so the only explanation was that Yang Kai had secretly used some amazing means to turn the situation around, but no one saw it clearly. Xiao Chen's eyebrows furrowed tightly. He secretly felt that there was something wrong with Kai Yang. Interesting. Lan Zun's beautiful eyes lit up. She showed an interested look. She looked at Yang Kai with interest. Although she was only at the level of the First Order Dao Source Realm, because she was the pearl in the palm of the Great Emperors and had inherited the special physique of the Great Emperors, she had been influenced by the Great Emperors since she was a child, so in terms of knowledge, experience, and vision, she was better than anyone present. Although she did not understand much, she was better than the others. Just now, at the moment when Luo Yuan and Wu Chang's attacks were about to hit him, Lan Zun clearly saw Yang Kai's body turn illusory for a moment. At that moment, he seemed to have disappeared from this world and entered another space. At the same time, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan's attacks arrived. Having lost the target of their attacks, the two men's moves collided with each other. In other words, the one who repelled Luo Yuan was an Anitya Hellguard, and the one who repelled an Anitya Hellguard was Luo Yuan. The two of them had only exchanged one move each. What a strange secret technique. Lan Zun's beautiful eyes lit up. Glancing over at Luo Yuan again, Yang Kai thought to himself, this guy is ridiculously strong, actually being able to fight evenly with Wu Chang. The octagonal door. When did such a monster appear? It seemed like his father, Master, was right. Never underestimate anyone, even if they came from a humble background. He could also have a bright and promising future. This Luo Yuan is the best example. The other guy is definitely not as bad as he appears to be. This show is too fake. Only a smelly man with a brain full of muscles would really believe it. But then again, what's this guy's name? All kinds of distracting thoughts flashed through Lan Zun's mind as she firmly believed that Yang Kai was playing the pig to eat the tiger. She couldn't help casting a mocking look at Yang Kai, who was shivering mid-air, as if she had long seen through his disguise. At that moment, Wu Chang finally recovered and looked over at Yang Kai. Staring at Luo Yuan coldly, he asked, "Do you want to die?" Although he did not understand when Yang Kai had repelled him just now, Wu Chang was able to figure out who had struck him. With his arrogant personality, he naturally pointed his spear at Luo Yuan. He thought it was Luo Yuan who had ruined his plan and given Yang Kai the opportunity to use his strange secret technique to resolve the crisis. "Who are you asking?" Yang Kai looked flustered as he pointed at himself, Are you talking about me? I don't want to die, please don't kill me. As he spoke, he also called out to Xiao Bai Yi, Xiao Bai, can you explain to brother Wu Chang and ask him to let me go? Xiao Bai Yi glared at him and gritted his teeth. I really want to rush over and kill you right now. Fortunately, Yang Kai was not a disciple of Azure Sun Temple, otherwise, Xiao Bai Yi would have really done such a thing. It was really shameful to be in the same sect as such a person. Xiao Bai Yi secretly hated himself for not seeing Yang Kai's true nature before, otherwise, he would not have agreed to give Shui Yi's spot to Yang Kai. Even Murong Xiao Xiao, who was standing next to him, cast a strange look at Yang Kai. If you want to fight, then I'll fight. Luo Yuan's eyes also crossed Yang Kai, his sonorous voice and determined expression showing that he was not afraid of the famous Wu Chang at all. In fact, deep down in his heart, he could not wait to fight Wu Chang to prove himself. The two of them ignored Yang Kai together. You've got guts. Wu Chang grinned, his expression very pleasant. I haven't met a guy like you in a long time, you're really interesting. As he spoke, he even stuck out his tongue and licked his lower lip. He looked like a pervert who had just met a naked beauty. The two's eyes met mid-air and sparks flew, the atmosphere in the air becoming extremely tense. Yang Kai stood between the two of them, and although he was ignored, he had to bear the pressure of the two at the same time, causing his already pale face to become even more unbearable. Asterisk hoo. Asterisk even the noisy wind was filled with cold murderous intent, sending chills down one's spine. Enough. Seeing that Luo Yuan and Wu Chang were about to fight, Lan Xun really couldn't stand it anymore. After shouting softly, she took 2 steps forward and said, both of you are rising stars of my southern territory, future pillars of the Four Seasons sect. There is no need to quarrel over such trivial matters. Before coming in, Uncle Xiao also said that he hoped everyone would focus on the overall situation. Our opponents are not each other, but the people from the other 3 territories. I ask the 2 of you to give us some face and turn weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk. Hearing this, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan frowned at the same time, seemingly not having expected Princess Lan Xun to come forward to mediate at this time. Although they were a little unhappy in their hearts, the 2 of them really didn't dare not give face to Princess Lan Xun. Offending Lan Xun here was nothing, but once they left the Four Seasons realm and word of this spread, their sects would no longer dare to shelter them. Since the princess has said so, the 2 of you should stop, otherwise, you will become this Xiao's enemy. Xiao Chen also stood up. As a qualified flower protector, he naturally knew what to say at this time. Consider yourself lucky. Wu Chang and Luo Yuan said this sentence almost at the same time, restraining their auras, as if their master had magnanimously let the other party off the hook. Wu Chang glanced at Luo Yuan and said to Lan Xun, Your Highness, this Wu Chang will give you face this time and not bother with him, but if there is a next time, even if the great emperors are here, I will kill this piece of garbage who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In his eyes, except for a few people, all other cultivators could be classified as garbage. He didn't even put the elite disciples of Azure Sun Temple and Orthodoxy Temple in his eyes, so how could he respect Luo Yuan, who came from the octagonal door? Being provoked by a piece of garbage like this, if it weren't for Lan Xun's interference, he wouldn't have tolerated it. I have long heard of Heavenly Marshal Holy Land's Wu Chang's strength, but now it seems that all he has is a big mouth. Luo Yuan was not someone to be trifled with, and his words were laced with sarcasm, almost provoking the peaceful atmosphere again. Enough. Lan Xun also felt a headache coming on. If you really want to fight over some rare treasure, I won't bother to stop you, but if it's just because of a single star seal, it's not worth it. There is more than 1 star seal in the Four Seasons realm, and there is still plenty of time. Everyone can just go and find one. While speaking, she glanced at the back of Yang Kai's hand and continued, and, this is just a single rhombus-shaped star seal, it's even less worth it. What? Star seals are divided into grades. Yang Kai immediately heard a trace of unusual information from Lan Xun's words and asked in surprise. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? Xiao Chen glanced at him indifferently and said sarcastically, since you've survived, you should obediently run away with your tail between your legs. Are you still going to stay here and wait for death? Ha ha. Yang Kai's mouth twitched a few times as his expression became awkward. He turned his gaze to Xiao Baiyi, wanting to ask about the specific situation of the star seal, but he didn't expect Xiao Baiyi to look away directly with a look of silence. Yang Kai suddenly felt depressed. However, looking at Xiao Baiyi's appearance, he should know something, but this information was probably the same as the existence of the flowing time temple, a sect secret, so it was not convenient for him to reveal it. On the side, Murong Xiao Xiao showed an apologetic expression to Yang Kai. Yang Kai understood and no longer asked any more questions. Good, now that this star seal has an owner, there's no need for any more superfluous ideas. Go do what you need to do. Lan Zun's words were like the final nail in the coffin, helping Yang Kai in disguise. After hearing her say this, as long as someone had some dignity, they would no longer try to snatch Yang Kai's star seal. Although Wu Chang and Luo Yuan were belligerent and unruly, they still had some dignity and wouldn't say one thing in public and another behind their backs. As soon as her voice fell, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan glanced at each other, both of their eyes conveying the same message: "Don't let me see you again, or I'll teach you a lesson." Immediately, the two of them coldly snorted at the same time, turned their backs to each other, and prepared to leave. But at that moment, a sudden change occurred. In the depths of the Two Seasons mountain range, there was a strange vibration, bringing with it a series of rumbling sounds, like muffled thunder shuttling through the earth, making people unable to stand still. The faces of everyone present changed drastically as they looked around in surprise, not knowing what was going on. Before the sound was over, someone exclaimed, "Look at the sky, something is falling." Chapter 2151. The one who spoke was Murong Xiao Xiao. At this moment, she was looking up at the sky while pointing her finger upwards, her mouth slightly open, her expression full of surprise. Following the direction she pointed, everyone looked up and was stunned for a moment. In the sky, streams of light cut through the sky, like meteorites falling from the sky, dragging long gorgeous tails behind them as they fell in a certain direction. At first, there were only a few streams of light, but soon, the number of streams of light increased, making it look like a meteor shower was falling from the sky. Star seals. Lan Zun looked shocked and shouted, "So many star seals? What?" Xiao Chen was taken aback when he heard this. "Princess, are you sure these are all star seals?" Lan Zun stared at the sky, seemingly using some kind of secret technique as her eyes flashed faintly. She nodded lightly and said, "Yes, they are all star seals." As soon as her voice fell, a soft sound came from the side. Everyone looked over and saw that Wu Chang's whole body had turned into a red and white brilliance, quickly chasing in the direction of the falling star seals. Wu Chang reacted quickly, and as soon as he heard that the things falling from the sky were star seals, he immediately acted. Behind him, Luo Yuan's figure flickered and he followed closely. "Let's go." Xiao Baiyi naturally did not neglect and shouted as he and Murong Xiao Xiao hurriedly chased after them. They had been in the Four Seasons realm for 2 to 3 days now and had only encountered one star seal in the Two Seasons mountain range. That star seal was a brand that had appeared on the forehead of a giant lizard monster beast. Everyone had attacked and seriously injured it, but after chasing it, Yang Kai had unexpectedly picked up a ready-made star seal. Even Luo Yuan and Wu Chang almost fought over it. At this moment, with so many star seals appearing, even if everyone present divided them equally, each person could get 6 or 7. A star seal meant a voucher to enter the Shattered Star Sea, which was of great significance to any sect. Xiao Baiyi and Murong Xiao Xiao did not dare to neglect. "Princess." Seeing that everyone was leaving as fast as lightning, Xiao Chen immediately became anxious. "We'll go too." Lan Zun naturally would not miss such a good thing. Lan Zun replied immediately. Xiao Chen nodded, and together with Lan Zun, flew over. However, as soon as the two of them set off, a boat-like flight-type artifact flew alongside them. Lan Zun turned her head and saw Yang Kai standing on the wooden boat as if nothing had happened. His black hair fluttered in the wind as the wind blew his black hair back. Lan Zun couldn't help but sneer. After all, at this moment, Yang Kai's image was completely different from his previous cowardly self. It looked like he was trying to attract her attention. She understood Yang Kai's approach very well. Basically, there were very few men who could maintain their nature in front of her. Those people were always trying to get her attention, as if they could get some satisfaction from it. Humph. Xiao Chen snorted coldly, looking displeased. He had been unhappy with Yang Kai for a long time, and now this guy was shamelessly pretending to be cool. It was simply unbearable. Yang Kai didn't seem to notice his attitude. Pretending to be familiar with her, he turned to Lan Xun and asked, "Young lady, why does this friend next to you call you princess? Is this young lady's name or something? Who would have the word princess in their name?" Lan Xun smiled slightly and shook her head. "You think too much." Then, "I don't understand." Yang Kai shook his head and said, "I can see that young lady's temperament is extraordinary and her manners are elegant. Obviously, she is of noble birth and has a good upbringing, but what does this have to do with being a princess? Can young lady clear up my doubts?" Lan Xun frowned and couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. She couldn't tell Yang Kai that she was the daughter of the Bright Moon Great Emperors, which was why she was called princess. If she said that, she would be blowing her own trumpet, even if it was the truth. She could only ask back, "I am from Star Soul Palace, can't you guess?" In her opinion, as long as someone had a little common sense, after hearing this sentence, they should be able to connect the dots, so there was no need for her to answer. But to her surprise, after pondering for a while, Kai Yang actually shook his head in a serious manner. Yang Kai's ignorance made Xiao Chen unable to stand it anymore, and he couldn't help but coldly snort. "Star Soul Palace is a sect founded by the great emperors of Bright Moon, and the one in front of you is the pearl in the palm of the great emperor." "Huh?" Yang Kai was shocked and stammered, "So you are the daughter of the great emperors?" He looked extremely shocked. "Origin doesn't mean anything." Lan Xun smiled slightly and was quite approachable. On the contrary, Xiao Chen couldn't help but curse. Where did this country bumpkin come from? He hasn't even heard of Her Highness's name, yet he still entered the Four Seasons realm. He is simply a disgrace to all of us. "Your Highness, don't bother with this person," Yang Kai said awkwardly. "I used to cultivate in the mountains and came out to experience things not long ago, so I don't know much about the outside world. Heh, but I have heard of the name of the great emperors of Bright Moon." "Is that so?" Lan Xun didn't know whether to believe it or not. Anyway, he couldn't tell from her expression. "It seems that you are the kind of cultivator who works hard in seclusion. It is normal that you don't know much about the outside world. Your Highness is overpraising me. I am just ignorant." Yang Kai scratched his cheek and said modestly, "At least you have some self-awareness." Xiao Chen said, "By the way, what is your name?" Lan Xun asked. Xiao Chen said, "Princess, why are you asking for this country bumpkin's name? Don't dirty your ears. What's wrong with asking?" Lan Xun frowned. Obviously, she didn't like Xiao Chen poking his nose into her business. If it weren't for the great emperors of Bright Moon personally instructing her before coming out, she wouldn't have stayed with Xiao Chen all the time and would have gone out on her own. For her, nothing was as happy as her own adventure. That kind of excitement and unknown danger made her unable to stop. "This humble one is Yang Kai." Lan Xun nodded and suddenly showed a smile. She said, "There is one thing I don't understand. I don't know if Brother Yang is willing to enlighten me." Yang Kai's eyes flickered and he chuckled. "Your Highness, if you have anything to ask, this Yang will tell you everything." Lan Xun said, "Brother Yang, you can't be so sure. Maybe the question I ask is related to your secret, playing hard to get. If it were a man who wanted to hook up with you, I'm afraid he would have already patted his chest and asked you to ask as much as you want to win a good impression. Sure enough, this little girl is not to be trifled with." Yang Kai said in his heart. He vaguely guessed what Lan Xun wanted to ask, so he said without fear, "Your Highness is giving me face by asking me something. What can't I say?" As soon as this remark came out, Xiao Chen secretly felt that something was wrong. Although this country bumpkin named Yang Kai was a wild boy who jumped out of the mountains and forests, he seemed to know a woman's heart well. He had just met the princess and was already chatting so congenially. How could this be tolerated? The most important thing was that Her Highness, who had never spoken to a man, had been dealing with this country bumpkin with a smile. Xiao Chen felt a sense of crisis in his heart, so he immediately cast a threatening look at Yang Kai. It was a look that said, "If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will teach you a lesson." Because of the position and angle, Lan Xun couldn't notice his action, and it was smoothly transmitted to Yang Kai's vision. Who would have thought that Yang Kai didn't look at him at all? It was as if he was completely fascinated by Lan Xun, and his whole mind was devoted to the princess. Xiao Chen felt a sense of powerlessness as if he had punched cotton. Just now, those two people besieged you one after the other. How did you get out of danger? Lan Xun asked bluntly. It was indeed as she said. This question was definitely related to Yang Kai's secret. A first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator could be unscathed under the attack of two third-order Dao Source Realm cultivators. He must have used some kind of amazing secret technique. How could such a secret technique be leaked casually? So as soon as Lan Xun said this, Yang Kai immediately showed an embarrassed look. He smiled and stammered, haha, actually it's fine if you can't say it, just pretend I didn't ask. Lan Xun said. These words sounded understanding, but it was also a move to loosen the reins. A man like Yang Kai who was completely fascinated by Lan Xun at this moment could only think with his body. How could he bear to refuse to answer this question? Under normal circumstances, he would have to say it even if he didn't want to. So he sighed and said, "It's not that I can't say it, but," at this point, he suddenly put on a solemn expression, and at the same time lowered his voice and said, "Please keep it a secret for me, princess. If this secret technique is spread, it won't work. The next time I encounter this situation, I'm afraid I will definitely die." As he spoke, he deliberately moved closer to Lan Xun and almost put his mouth on her ear. A fragrance immediately lingered at the tip of his nose. The two were too close, and Lan Xun couldn't avoid it. Her delicate ears suddenly turned red. "What are you doing?" Seeing this scene, Xiao Chen couldn't bear it and shouted. At the same time, a sword appeared in his hand and pointed at Yang Kai across Lan Xun. Yang Kai was shocked. He quickly pulled away and said innocently, "I didn't do anything, what do you mean by this?" "You just..." Xiao Chen said halfway and couldn't continue. After all, although Yang Kai was closer to Lan Xun, he really didn't do anything. If he really pursued this, he would be too stingy. He could only snort and say, in short, just stand there and talk. "If you dare to come closer, I will take your head." Yang Kai said in amazement, "This friend is really strange." "Fine, then I'll stand here and explain. Your Highness, please enlighten me. My secret technique is called the universe-shifting divine art. Once I use it, I can borrow the force of my opponent's attack and defeat the strong." "Borrow force to defeat the strong?" Lan Xun looked surprised. "Yes." Yang Kai nodded and said seriously, "The two guys before, one in front and one behind, both wanted to take my life, which happened to meet the key points of the Qian Kuan shifting divine art, so I..." Yang Kai smiled and stretched out his hand to draw a semicircle, just a little bit, and let them fight on their own. Lan Xun said thoughtfully, "So, if only one person attacked you at that time, then I'm dead." Yang Kai spread his hands. Chapter 2152. Is there such a magical secret technique in this world? Lan Xun was surprised after listening to Yang Kai's explanation. She was quite knowledgeable, after all, she was the daughter of the Bright Moon Great Emperors. Of course, she could learn all kinds of secret techniques in Star Soul Palace, but she had never heard of anything similar to the universe-shifting divine art. However, the efficacy of this secret technique was obvious to all. Yang Kai, with his first-order Dao Source Realm cultivation, remained unscathed under the attacks of two third-order masters. This was simply a shocking feat. How could she know that there was no such thing as the universe-shifting divine art in this world? Yang Kai had just used his nihility secret technique at a critical moment to hide himself in the void. "This secret technique should be kept to your highness, please don't divulge it to anyone else," Yang Kai solemnly exhorted, almost making Lan Xun swear an oath. Lan Xun couldn't help nodding. At the same time, she was wondering if she should take this secret technique from Yang Kai. Although the conditions for using the universe-shifting divine art were a bit harsh, it was undeniable that it could save one's life at a critical moment. Suddenly, Yang Kai rubbed his hands again and said with an embarrassed look, "Your Highness, I answered one of your questions, can you also answer one of mine?" "What do you want to ask, boy?" Before Lan Zun could speak, Xiao Chen immediately became vigilant. "I just want to ask about the star seal." "What do you think I want to ask?" Yang Kai looked at Xiao Chen innocently, as if he was intimidated by his imposing manner. Lan Zun pursed her lips and smiled. "Big brother Xiao Chen, why are you being so fierce to others?" She turned to look at Yang Kai. "You want to ask about the classification and grade of star seals, right?" Yang Kai nodded repeatedly and flattered. "Princess is really intelligent, seeing through this humble one's thoughts at a glance." Lan Zun smiled non-committally, but she was not stingy. She looked solemn and said, "Star seals are indeed divided into grades. The shape of a star seal is not fixed. However, the more complex a star seal is, the higher its grade. For example, the rhombus-shaped star seal in your hand should be considered a relatively low-grade one. Below it, only the triangular star seal is inferior to it. Above it, there are 5-point, 6-point, 7-point, and even 8-pointed star seals. Different star seals. What is the difference?" Yang Kai sincerely asked. The reason why he deliberately tried to get close to Lan Zun was because he wanted to. It was all for the sake of obtaining information on star seals. Although he should be able to get an answer by asking Hua Qing Sai, Lan Zun was still the daughter of the great emperor, so she might have some information that others didn't. "I can't explain the specific differences." Lan Zun slowly shook her head, but it is said that the higher the grade of the star seal, the more benefits one can obtain in the shattered star sea. "Is that so?" Yang Kai pondered. Not to mention whether Lan Zun told him all the information she knew, she at least answered Yang Kai's doubts. Even if it was not comprehensive, Yang Kai could not ask more. While they were talking, they arrived at their destination. In front of them, cultivators gathered in 2s and 3s, standing on the treetops of a forest. They all looked up at the sky, seemingly waiting for something silently. Seeing this, Yang Kai immediately jumped to an unoccupied treetop. He looked around. Wu Chang, Luo Yuan, Xiao Bai Yi, Murong Xiao Xiao, and others who set off before him were already here. In addition, there were some other cultivator, obviously attracted by the previous movement. Yang Kai glanced around and found that there were at least a dozen people. Moreover, there were constant sounds of breaking wind coming from the depths of the jungle. Obviously, some people were coming this way. High up in the sky, a huge cloud was tumbling about. This cloud had a golden luster, as if it was made of pure gold. It was extremely dazzling, and it was easy to imagine what kind of mysteries it contained. Yang Kai faintly felt a strange energy fluctuation from this golden cloud. While observing, his eyes suddenly paused and he glanced in a direction not far away. Over there, a man and a woman were looking at him with a smile. Seeing him look over, the woman waved at Yang Kai. "Bad luck." Yang Kai cursed, but he could not pretend not to see them. His figure flickered, and he jumped a few dozen meters from his treetop to the opposite side. "Why are you here?" After Yang Kai landed, he asked the two of them. These two people were none other than Bian Yuqing and Ku Wu of Blue Feather Sect. Although Yang Kai had no grievances with these two, they still had Wu Meng Mountain behind them. If possible, Yang Kai really did not want to deal with them. "We were originally here," Bian Yuqing replied with a smile. Listening to what she said, it seemed that after they were brought here, they appeared in the Two Seasons mountain range. "Oh!" Ku Wu's eyes lit up as he stared at the back of Yang Kai's hand and said, "Junior brother Yang actually obtained a star seal? That's really worth celebrating." Yang Kai's mouth twitched as he said helplessly, "If possible, I don't want this thing." Junior brother Yang's words, aren't they insincere? Ku Wu joked. Yang Kai snorted, "Look around and see how they react after hearing your words. You'll know what I mean." Ku Wu raised his head and glanced around, his face suddenly sinking. Because he found that all the cultivator gathered here had cast their eyes on the back of Yang Kai's hand, and a few of them even showed greedy and covetous eyes. Although there were dozens of star seals falling in the sky just now, so far, none of the cultivator present had obtained a star seal. Star seals were related to the voucher to enter the Shattered Star Sea. Before entering the Four Seasons realm, every sect's elder had repeatedly instructed their disciples to do their best to compete for star seals while ensuring their own safety. Ku Wu did not notice and spoke a little too loudly, causing Yang Kai to become the focus of everyone's attention. He could not help but feel a little guilty and uneasy. Bian Yuqing giggled, her beautiful eyes rolling as she said softly, "If you don't want it, how about giving it to me? In your dreams?" Yang Kai coldly snorted. So ruthless. Bian Yuqing glared at Yang Kai bitterly, biting her red lips and saying, "If I hadn't taken care of you in the past, how could you be where you are today? You still have the nerve to mention the past." Yang Kai squinted at her and coldly snorted, "If you hadn't forced me to stay in the Blue Feather sect back then, I wouldn't have been what?" Bian Yuqing asked. "Nothing." Yang Kai waved his hand. When he remembered that Wu Mengshan had forcibly taught him the heaven-devouring Great Emperor's battle technique, he felt uneasy. Fortunately, he did not cultivate that secret art himself and instead gave it to his embodiment. In this way, even if Wu Mengshan had any tricks up his sleeve, he would not be harmed. Look at this person, sure enough, he has a human face but a beast's heart. Just now, he acted so submissive and naive in front of Her Highness, but now he's messing around with such an enchanting woman. Sure enough, he's not a good thing. Not far away, Xiao Chen, who had finally found an opportunity, approached Lan Zun and looked at Yang Kai contemptuously while trying his best to discredit him. "Just say it, why are you getting so close?" Lan Zun flashed to the side with a look of disgust. "I'm afraid you can't hear me." After his little trick was exposed, Xiao Chen looked embarrassed, and at the same time, he hated Yang Kai even more. Just now, Yang Kai had also approached the princess and talked to her like this, but the princess did not hate him so much. Now, it was his turn to be despised. The anger in Xiao Chen's heart surged upwards. "I'm not deaf." Lan Zun coldly snorted, her beautiful eyes looking around suspiciously. "Compared to this, I'm more interested in, where did those fallen star seals go?" Everyone had been chasing in the direction where the star seals fell, but after arriving here, there was no trace of them. Lan Zun could not help but feel a little puzzled. "Let me ask," Xiao Chen immediately volunteered. Xiao Chen immediately volunteered. As soon as he finished speaking, he swept his gaze around and finally fixed it on a short man. This person was not alone. Instead, he was together with a man and a woman. Judging from the attire of these three people, they should be from the same sect. Their cultivation was not low, at least at the level of the third-order Dao Source realm, while the other man and woman were both second-order Dao Source realm cultivators. "You. Come here for a moment." Xiao Chen pointed at the short man from afar and shouted. The short man heard this, looked around for a while, then pointed at himself suspiciously and said, "Me? Yes, you." Xiao Chen shouted impatiently. After confirming that Xiao Chen was calling him, the short man's face changed slightly, and the man and woman with him also looked nervous, not knowing what Xiao Chen wanted to do. Before entering the Four Seasons realm, the elders of the small sects and families had done a comprehensive investigation and had already passed on the names and portraits of the elites and important figures of the major sects to their disciples. This way, the possibility of friction between the disciples and these people could be avoided. Therefore, even if the short man and the other two had never seen Xiao Chen in person, they knew his identity. At this moment, seeing that Xiao Chen wanted him to go over, the short man's heart was naturally beating like a drum. Although he also had the cultivation of the third-order Dao Source realm, which was the same as Xiao Chen's, he was self-aware. Although their cultivation was the same, if they really fought, he was afraid that he would be killed by Xiao Chen in less than the time it would take to drink a cup of tea. This was the difference between one's background and one's cultivation. Although he was extremely reluctant, the short man flew over to Xiao Chen and Lan Zun, squeezing out an ugly smile on his face, and cupping his fists. "Renwu sect's Jing Li greets Master Xiao. I wonder what orders does Master Xiao have for this one?" This guy named Jing Li put himself in a very humble position. Although he was much older than Xiao Chen and had the same cultivation as Xiao Chen, he kept calling him master, which made Xiao Chen feel comfortable. Chapter 2153. Seeing that Jing Li was so tactful, Xiao Chen didn't put on an expression and instead asked with a smile, "Let me ask you, how long have you been here?" Jing Li replied, "We arrived a little earlier than master. Then have you seen where the things that fell from the sky before went? It seems that they all fell into the golden cloud and are nowhere to be found." As Jing Li spoke, he pointed to the rolling golden cloud in the sky. "It landed there." Xiao Chen raised his head to look and frowned. With his cultivation and divine sense, he could naturally perceive that the golden cloud contained unusual energy, but he didn't know what kind of mysteries were hidden in it. Xiao Chen couldn't help showing an awkward expression as he looked at Lan Xun and said, "Princess, what do you think?" Lan Xun frowned slightly and said after a while, "Let's wait and see." Although the dozens of star seals had all fallen into the golden cloud, if they rashly investigated without knowing the details of the cloud, they might encounter some kind of danger. Even someone like Wu Chang didn't dare to act rashly, so it was obvious that it was not easy to be the first to act. When Xiao Chen was asking questions, Yang Kai had been listening attentively, so he naturally heard Jing Li's answer. At this moment, he looked at Ku Wu with an inquiring gaze, and the latter nodded slightly to him, indicating that Jing Li was right. While everyone was delayed, many people had already rushed over from all directions. Most of these people were originally active in the vicinity, but they were all attracted by the phenomenon of the star seal falling down. Originally, there were only a dozen people, but in just a short while, it had increased to more than 20 people. The number of people increased. Naturally, some cultivator became vigilant and looked around vigilantly, making the atmosphere dignified and strange. However, this situation did not last long. After about the time it would take to make a cup of tea, a buzzing sound suddenly came from the rolling golden cloud in the sky. The sound was extremely loud, as if something was being reborn from the inside of the golden cloud, causing the expressions of all the cultivators present to turn solemn. Everyone looked over. Golden light burst out, the golden cloud squirmed, and a vague giant shadow suddenly emerged from the golden light. As soon as the huge shadow appeared, everyone felt a solemn atmosphere. It was as if it was born from the void and slowly revealed its true appearance. With its appearance, the golden cloud in the sky constantly distorted and gradually dissipated. After a while, the outline of the giant shadow was finally revealed. Is this, a palace? How can there be a palace here? And it appeared out of thin air. Ha ha ha, I know what this is. Flowing Time Temple, a bunch of idiots. This is definitely the legendary Flowing Time Temple. Flowing Time Temple? What is that? Of the people present, not everyone knew the secrets of the Flowing Time Temple. Some of them were cultivators from small sects and small families. Some of them had never heard of the Flowing Time Temple. Only those great forces with long inheritances would have records of the Flowing Time Temple in their ancient books. Before the disciples of their sects entered, their elders would also explain this confidential information to them and ask them to pay more attention. Yang Kai even suspected that Xiao Bai Yi and Murong Xiao Xiao were deliberately active here to find traces of the Flowing Time Temple. Even Wu Chang, Lan Xun, and the others were suspicious. Otherwise, how could they gather together so coincidentally? No one knew whether the outline of the palace that had emerged from the golden cloud was the legendary Flowing Time Temple, but Yang Kai felt that it was. In all likelihood, this was the real Flowing Time Temple. Because the location indicated on the map given to him by Hua Qing Sai was probably in this area. It was just that he did not expect that the Flowing Time Temple would be hidden in the void and appear in such a shocking way. There were even dozens of star seals that fell to guide the way. As a result, there were many competitors. Yang Kai's mind flashed with distracting thoughts. Suddenly, he noticed that someone was looking at him. He couldn't help but look at Bian Yuqing and ask, "Is there something on my face?" Bian Yuqing coldly snorted and said, "You should know something about the Flowing Time Temple, right?" Yang Kai heard this and curled his lips fiercely. Bian Yuqing said, "Just say it, it's not like you'll lose a piece of meat." "It's not like I'll lose a piece of meat, but why should I tell you this?" Yang Kai looked at her with a sneer. Bian Yuqing pouted in dissatisfaction and said, "Boy, you're strong, so your wings have hardened. Then what do you want?" While speaking, she suddenly looked at Yang Kai vigilantly, crossed her arms over her chest, and said, "You're not planning something bad, are you? If you weren't so cheap, we could still have a good chat." Yang Kai squinted at her. Bian Yuqing was so angry that she looked extremely annoyed. Ku Wu smiled and said, "Junior brother Yang, if it's convenient, can you tell us about the Flowing Time Temple? Protector Bian and I really don't know anything about it." Yang Kai frowned and said, "Since brother Ku says so, there's no harm in telling you. But let's make it clear first, from now on, we really don't owe each other anything. From now on, we'll mind our own business. Why are you so wary of us?" Bian Yuqing asked angrily. She could feel that since they met again, Yang Kai had been very vigilant towards her and Ku Wu, as if he wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. "You wouldn't understand even if I told you." Yang Kai glanced at her and said with a solemn expression, "I don't know much about the Flowing Time Temple. I only know that it is the palace of the Flowing Time Great Emperor, the Great Emperors. It can even be said that the Four Seasons realm was born because of the Flowing Time Great Emperor, the Flowing Time Great Emperor, the Great Emperors." Bian Yuqing's expression changed slightly. From her reaction, it was obvious that she had also heard of the Great Emperors. Yang Kai nodded and told her what he knew one by one. In fact, there wasn't much to say, because even if he knew this, he still couldn't tell what was hidden in the Flowing Time Temple. There might be opportunities there, but there might also be fatal traps. It seems that those disappeared star seals should have fallen into the Flowing Time Temple. Bian Yuqing speculated. "That's for sure." Yang Kai grinned. "I don't know if it has anything to do with the fall of the star seals, otherwise, this temple might not have appeared. Junior brother Yang means that the fall of the star seals is an opportunity. If it weren't for this, we would never have been able to find the Flowing Time Temple?" Ku Wu asked. Yang Kai nodded and said with an excited expression, "But this Flowing Time Temple not only contains the benefits left by the Flowing Time Great Emperor, but also the star seals. I'm afraid no one would ignore it, right?" While they were talking, the golden cloud in the sky had almost completely disappeared, replaced by a magnificent and solemn hall. Even from a long distance, one could feel the simple majesty of this hall. It was like a dormant ancient behemoth that was slowly waking up. At a certain moment, the hall was finally fully revealed, and with a rumbling sound, it completely froze in the void. *shio. The sound of something breaking through the air rang out as two figures rushed forward almost at the same time. They were Wu Chang and Luo Yuan, who had been waiting for a long time. These two were bold and daring, so they directly rushed to the forefront. As soon as these two moved, the other cultivator naturally could not hold back and used their movement skills to fly into the sky. Yang Kai was naturally among them. As he said, no one knew whether there were hidden opportunities in the Flowing Time Temple, but there were definitely dozens of star seals inside. This alone was enough to drive anyone crazy. When they were looking at the Flowing Time Temple from the ground, they did not feel that it was very big, but the closer they got, the more they felt the magnificence of this hall. It took everyone a full quarter of an hour to arrive at the front of the hall. The periphery of the hall was wrapped in a layer of golden light, and at the center of it was a horizontal plaque with the words Flowing Time Great Emperor written on it. Those two large words were written in a flamboyant style, and they seemed to contain an extremely profound energy. It caused one to feel dizzy and have the misconception that time had flowed by for no reason. After Yang Kai glanced at it, he was shocked and quickly withdrew his gaze. Unfortunately, one of them fell victim to it. Yang Kai didn't know which sect this person came from, but he was a second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. He was fine when he was flying forward, but at a certain moment, his eyes were completely attracted by the two big words on the plaque, unable to move away. At a speed visible to the naked eye, this person's black hair quickly turned white, and then it was blown away by the wind. At the same time, his body, which could be considered strong, was also rapidly aging. In less than 10 breaths of time, this person had become so thin that he was only skin and bones. His face, which was originally around 30 years old, was now full of wrinkles and wrinkles. It was as if 1,000 years of the Flowing Time Great Emperor had passed by in that short period of time. What was shocking was that this person was not aware of it at all. His eyes were fixed on the two words Flowing Time Great Emperor on the plaque, allowing the principles of time to erode his spirit and body, and even had a strange smile on his face. Halfway through, this person's vitality faded away and he fell straight down. After a while, there was a sound of him falling to the ground. Everyone's face changed drastically. With this person as an example, no one dared to look at the two words flowing time Great Emperor, lest they accidentally fall into the trap. This was the supreme power left behind by the great emperors. Once a Tao Source Realm cultivator fell into it, they could not extricate themselves. Hong Hong Hong. At that moment, Wu Chang and Luo Yuan, who were the first to set off, arrived in front of the hall at the same time, but when their bodies came into contact with the layer of golden light outside the hall, they were blocked by an invisible force, preventing them from entering the hall. The two of them did not believe this and tried several times to test it out, but when they found that it was still the same, they became furious and attacked the golden light. Two loud bangs rang out as the more violent attacks were reflected by the layer of golden light, forcing Wu Chang and Luo Yuan to retreat, their faces filled with shock. The two masters were even slightly injured because of this. Haha, so what if you ran fast? Weren't you still blocked? Seeing this scene, Xiao Chen, who had followed closely behind, laughed loudly. Wu Chang looked angry as he glared at Xiao Chen and shouted, "If you have the ability, go in and show me." Xiao Chen smiled lightly and shook his head. Even brother Wu Chang failed, so how can this Xiao enter? I'd rather save my energy. Chapter 2154. Then cut the sarcasm. Wu Chang was not afraid of Xiao Chen at all, even though the other party was from Star Soul Palace, the overlord of the Southern Territory. For Wu Chang, there were only two kinds of people in this world. Those who were stronger than him, and those who were weaker than him. The strong might win his respect and even his fighting spirit, but as for the weak, he never showed them any respect. It had nothing to do with their background. Being contradicted by Wu Chang like this, Xiao Chen seemed a little embarrassed and said with a gloomy face, "You should be glad that this Xiao has an important task to take care of, otherwise, I would have already taken your dog life." The important task he was talking about was naturally the task of protecting Princess Lan Xun. Wu Chang sneered and was too lazy to pay attention to him. While the two were arguing, many cultivators had already rushed to the front of the hall, each of them finding a place to look up at this huge and magnificent existence, feeling humble and insignificant deep in their hearts. "Everyone, what do you think?" Suddenly, a person stepped out of the crowd and came in front of Wu Chang and the others without fear, glancing at them and asking, "How do we break this golden barrier?" This person had a dignified appearance and a gentle temperament. He looked to be about 30 years old and was dressed in a black robe, looking very capable. The energy fluctuations he exuded all over his body showed that he was also a cultivator from the third order Tao Source realm. "Kong Qi, you're also here." Xiao Chen looked at this person and narrowed his eyes, seemingly recognizing him. The young man named Kong Qi smiled slightly and said, "Why can't I be here? Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce should have at least a few spots for the Four Seasons realm, right?" Brother Xiao's question is quite strange. Listening to him say this, Yang Kai immediately understood. This young man named Kong Qi should be a rising star of Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce. Although Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce was a large chamber of commerce in the Southern Territory, that did not mean that these two forces did not have any powerhouses. On the contrary, the heritage of these two chambers of commerce was no worse than that of any top sect. It was just that the world's understanding and prejudice had led them to believe that they were weaker. In this Kong's opinion, this should be a restriction formation. This should be a kind of spirit array. Shouldn't we find a friend who is proficient in this field to take a look? Kong Qi suggested. In the face of absolute power, any restriction or formation is nothing but an illusion. Just directly smash it. With a cold snort, Luo Yuan was the first to move. He stretched out his hand and grasped at the void, causing a battle axe to suddenly appear in his palm. He poured his source qi into it and the power of principles lingered around the axe's blade. The surging tide of spiritual energy and pressure caused everyone present to change their expressions. Even Wu Chang's expression became slightly dignified, seemingly feeling threatened by Luo Yuan's attack. The octagonal door really did produce a freak. A layer of light blue light flickered on the surface of Lan Xun's body, offsetting the impact of the pressure and spirit chi. Before that, she couldn't believe it no matter what. Just a small sect in the Southern Territory that could be considered a medium-sized sect was actually able to cultivate such a genius. Even in the Starsoul Palace, there were only a few such monsters. No wonder he dared to challenge Wu Chang without flinching. With such astonishing strength, he does indeed have the qualifications to be arrogant. Asterisk catcher, asterisk in front of everyone's eyes, Luo Yuan's arm holding the battle axe seemed to suddenly swell up, his muscles bulging. It was full of violent beauty. He slowly rotated the battle axe, seemingly accumulating strength, and with each rotation, the energy fluctuations coming from the battle axe doubled. After 3 or 5 times, the void trembled due to the terrifying energy fluctuations, and Wu Chang and the others who were close to the front even began to lose their footing. As for those cultivator with lower strength, they fell to the ground, their faces pale as they stared forward with trembling eyes. Everyone was wondering what the result would be if they were hit by such a blow. Yang Kai's eyes flashed, also shocked by Luo Yuan's actions, but he also knew that such an attack could not be displayed in a real battle because the time it took to accumulate strength was too long. No enemy could give Luo Yuan enough time to prepare. Correspondingly, the burden on Luo Yuan's body should not be small. He understood this. Among the people present, Wu Chang, Xiao Chen, and even Xiao Baiyi understood this. Lan Xun understood. Ha! Suddenly, Luo Yuan let out a roar and threw the battle axe out of his hand, transforming into a stream of light that seemed capable of destroying the heavens and earth as it rushed towards the golden light curtain in front of him. At this moment, everyone held their breath and watched quietly. Asterisk Hong, asterisk with a burst of light and a burst of energy, the golden light curtain caved in slightly, but it remained impregnable. In the next moment, the golden light returned to normal and the battle axe bounced back at an even faster speed, cutting through Luo Yuan's side and severing a few strands of his black hair. Luo Yuan reached out and touched his cheek, where there was a finger-length wound with warm blood flowing out. "Yen, it seems that brute force can't break this barrier," Kong Qi said lightly. "After all, this is a barrier arranged by a master from the Emperor realm." He did not ridicule Luo Yuan. Although Luo Yuan's behavior was a bit reckless, he proved with his actions that this barrier could not be broken by brute force. "Princess." Xiao Chen suddenly turned his head to look at Lan Xun and called out inquiringly. Lan Xun shook her head and said, "I haven't seen anything yet, so I'm not sure." Xiao Chen nodded lightly and said, "Then Princess should study it further." Lan Xun did not speak, her pair of beautiful eyes still staring forward. Looking at her posture, it seemed that she had also studied the Tao of spirit arrays and was looking for a weakness in this barrier. At this moment, Kong Qi turned around, looked forward, and said, "Everyone, is there anyone who is proficient in spirit arrays who can come and take a look? This should be the legendary flowing time temple. If we can crack this barrier, we can enter and take a look. If anyone has the ability to do so, please don't keep it to yourself." The 30 or so people looked at each other, but no one spoke. The Tao of spirit arrays, like the Tao of alchemy and the Tao of artifacts, was broad and profound. It was easy to begin with, but it was not so easy to cultivate to a higher realm. Everyone here was a Tao source realm cultivator and had some understanding of spirit arrays, but who among them had the confidence to crack a barrier left behind by a master from the Emperor realm? Amidst the silence, Kong Qi smiled slightly, turned his head to look at someone in the crowd, and said, "Brother Gong, why don't you come and try?" Everyone heard this and turned their eyes to the man, only to see him standing in place with a depressed expression, staring at Kong Qi sadly. "Gong, that's not a common surname, could it be? It's someone from Heavenly River Valley's Gong family, so that's how it is. Ha, there's hope to crack this barrier." Many cultivators were talking at once as they focused their gazes on the man surnamed Gong. "Who is this person?" Yang Kai asked in a low voice. "Why does everyone seem to have so much confidence in him?" Bian Yuqing glanced at him and said, "You're asking me?" She looked like she had finally found an opportunity to extort Yang Kai. "Don't tell me if you want to." Yang Kai snorted. Bian Yuqing narrowed her eyes and said, "This protector just realized that you are really hateful." That depends on who you're talking to, Kuzhong said. The Gong family is very famous in the Southern Territory. Although they aren't very strong, each of their cultivator is proficient in the Tao of Spirit Arrays and cannot be underestimated. This is especially true of their Gong family's old ancestor, who entered the Tao of Spirit Arrays and reached the Emperor realm several decades ago. In terms of the Tao of Spirit Arrays, he ranks among the top 3 in the entire Southern Territory. As for the person in front of you, if I remember correctly, he should be the current young master of the Gong family, Gong Wenshan. Understood, Yang Kai nodded. Ku Wu was right. The man in the crowd was the Gong family's young master, Gong Wenshan. Although his cultivation wasn't too high, it wasn't low either, having reached the second-order Tao source realm, but in terms of the Tao of Spirit Arrays, even if everyone present added together, they wouldn't be able to match him. The Gong family's Spirit Arrays were passed down from generation to generation. At this moment, Gong Wenshan's face was wrinkled like a bitter gourd as he walked forward step by step in front of everyone, muttering to himself as he walked, "Damn it. I just wanted to walk around and have some fun. How did I end up encountering such a troublesome situation? If I refuse now, I'll definitely provoke everyone's anger. These guys are all eyeing me covetously and will definitely beat the shit out of me. Ha, it's really annoying. Kong Chi, that bastard, I'll definitely make him swallow shit and commit suicide some other day." Kong Chi stood there, the corners of his mouth twitching as he said, "Brother Gong, you don't think that with this one's hearing? I can't hear what you're saying, do you?" Gong Wenshan frowned as he glanced up at Kong Chi and snorted, "I'm just saying it for you to hear, so what?" Kong Chi didn't know whether to laugh or cry and could only cup his fists and say, "Please forgive me, Brother Gong, but no one here is proficient in Spirit Arrays, so I can only count on you." Gong Wenshan snorted, "You and I have known each other for several dozen years, you know my temper." Kong Chi nodded repeatedly, "Yes, yes, yes, you hate trouble the most. I naturally know that. Breaking this Spirit Array is the most troublesome thing." Gong Wenshan's face was so cold it was almost possible to scrape off a layer of frost from it as he walked up to the golden light and stood there, glancing at it a few times before turning around and saying, "It's not impossible for me to break it, but what benefits will I get?" Benefits? Kong Chi's face twitched, wondering if this was the legendary looting a burning house. For a while, he didn't know how to respond. Sparing your life, does that count as a benefit? Wu Chang suddenly interjected. Gong Wenshan immediately turned his head to look at him, a sneer appearing at the corner of his mouth as he said, "Oh? Are you threatening me?" Wu Chang snorted, "Break this Spirit Array and you can live, otherwise, I'll make you die here right now." He had a serious look on his face, obviously not joking. No one thought he was joking, after all, these words came from Wu Chang's mouth. Interesting. Even facing Wu Chang, Gong Wenshan didn't show the slightest fear, meeting his gaze head-on without flinching, obviously having a strong temper. Chapter 2155. To the side, Kong Chi was shocked. Yang Kai and Gong Wenshan had known each other for several dozen years and understood his character and temperament. This person was born to be amenable to persuasion but not coercion. If Yang Kai spoke to him nicely, everything would be easy to negotiate, but if Yang Kai tried to threaten him, it would be a grave mistake. Gong Wenshan was undoubtedly being threatened by Wu Chang now. Kong Chi seemed to be able to foresee the scene of Gong Wenshan storming off. In this kind of place, if Gong Wenshan left, no one would be able to open the barrier of the flowing time temple. Considering all this, Kong Chi no longer cared about offending Wu Chang and his expression sank as he shouted, "Wu Chang, have you become an idiot? Brother Gong didn't say he wouldn't crack this barrier. What is the meaning of your words?" Wu Chang glanced at him coldly and said, "Who do you think you are? Do you think you have the right to tell me what to do?" Kong Chi became angry and shouted, "Don't you think you don't put anyone in your eyes?" Although he was not as famous as Wu Chang and Xia Sheng, he was still a rising star cultivated by Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce. His aptitude was extraordinary, so how could he not have a temper? So what? Wu Chang smiled proudly, "If you want to be put in my eyes, you need to have some strength." Xiao Chen seemed to be thinking about something at this time as he continued, "Brother Wu Chang, I'm afraid you don't put anyone in your eyes. TSK. As soon as this remark came out, Luo Yuan couldn't help frowning. He silently stretched out his hand. The battle axe that had been sent flying by the golden light barrier flew back with a whoosh. Although Wu Chang was a little rampant, he wasn't a fool. How could he not understand Xiao Chen's malicious intent? Therefore, he immediately turned to look at Xiao Chen and sneered, "What advice does Brother Xiao have for me? I wouldn't dare give advice." Xiao Chen smiled slightly. Brother Wu Chang is already the strongest person below the emperor. How could this Xiao dare give advice? These words were even more serious than the previous one. As soon as these words came out, even Xiao Baiyi, who had been standing silently to the side, showed some fighting spirit. "That's enough, stop arguing. Don't disturb Brother Gong from breaking the barrier," Lan Zun suddenly said. Hearing this, everyone turned their heads and found that the source of this quarrel, Gong Wenshan, had at some point sat cross-legged in front of the golden light, his previous lazy gaze replaced by a focused one. It was as if he wanted to find some clues from it. "At least you know what's good for you." Wu Chang coldly snorted, secretly feeling that Gong Wenshan was afraid of his threat. It wasn't just him. Basically, everyone present had the same thought. After all, Gong Wenshan had just asked about the benefits of breaking the barrier, but after being threatened by Wu Chang with a few words, hadn't he obediently submitted? For a moment, many people revealed looks of disdain. Although everyone still had to rely on Gong Wenshan's strength to enter the flowing time temple, this did not prevent them from despising him. Only one person, with cold sweat dripping from his forehead, stared thoughtfully at Gong Wenshan's side and thought to himself, "The situation is not good. Brother Gong has always been stubborn and never allowed himself to be threatened, but this time he is actually cooperating. What kind of trick is he trying to pull? Hiss, he's even showing that evil grin. It's all over." The more Kong Qi observed, the more he felt that Gong Wenshan's behavior was strange. Instinctively, a bad feeling welled up in his heart. At that moment, Gong Wenshan, who had been observing the golden light barrier for a while, seemed to have gained something. Stretching out his hand, he took out a delicate spirit array from his space ring. This spirit array was about the size of a palm and was engraved with countless mysterious runes and patterns. The Gong family's armillary sphere plate. Lan Zun's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up as she stared intently at this spirit array, but soon, a look of disappointment appeared on her face because the one in Gong Wenshan's hand was obviously not the real armillary sphere plate, but an imitation. Gong Wenshan formed a series of seals with his hands and poured them into the spirit array. Immediately after, the spirit array turned into a stream of light and shuttled through the barrier like a flexible fish. Everyone was watching intently, but very few people were able to see what was going on. Yang Kai could only vaguely speculate that this spirit array was an artifact that could be used to help find the weak points of barriers. Things were indeed as he thought. The Gong family's armillary sphere plate claimed to be able to break all spirit arrays and barriers in this world by relying on its strange ability to find weak points or array cores. However, the armillary sphere plate was the Gong family's hallowed artifact, so even if Gong Wenshan's status was not low, he was not qualified to carry it around with him. The spirit array he took out was the Gong family's imitation of the armillary sphere plate, and although there was a big gap between it and the real armillary sphere plate, it was still quite effective. The stream of light continued shuttling through the barrier at an extremely fast speed. At a certain moment, Gong Wenshan's eyes suddenly lit up and he muttered, "Found it, heh, is it really what I thought it was?" Gong Wenshan muttered to himself, but no one knew what he was talking about. Saying so, he stretched out his hand and took back the spirit array. After a short while, he took out some array flags and array cores from his space ring and leapt into the air, waving his hands and summoning a series of array flags and array cores. At this moment, Gong Wenshan's expression became solemn, as if what he was doing was extremely sacred. These array flags and array cores sank into the void and disappeared in an instant. No one knew where they went. Gong Wenshan tossed and turned for a stick of incense worth of time before he slowly descended from the sky, sweating profusely. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, turned around, and said to the crowd who had been waiting for a long time, "It's done. It's done." All the cultivator looked stunned as they looked at him, then at the intact golden barrier, disbelief written all over their faces. Gong Wenshan grinned and said, "I said it's done, so naturally, it's done." His words were full of confidence. Saying so, he put his palms together and clapped them fiercely. Countless rays of light burst out from the void, and as these rays of light bloomed, all of a sudden, a crack appeared in the golden light barrier that enveloped the flowing time temple. "Open for me!" Gong Wenshan shouted loudly. Slowly pushing his hands to the sides, the crack grew bigger and bigger as he moved, as if he had torn the barrier apart with his bare hands. "It's really done." This time, many cultivators were shocked. This was a barrier left behind by the great emperors of the flowing time Great Emperor. Even after countless years, it was not something an ordinary cultivator could open. But Gong Wenshan had done it. The Gong family's reputation is well deserved. Even Lan Xun could not help praising. She had to admit that in terms of the Tao of spirit arrays, Gong Wenshan was far ahead of her. Until now, she had not been able to see the weakness of the golden barrier, but Gong Wenshan had already broken it. "Many thanks, Brother Gong. After we return, I'll treat you to a drink." Kong Chi laughed and was the first to rush towards the crack. His figure flickered and disappeared. He instinctively felt that there would be trouble if he continued to stay, so it was better to leave first. With him taking the lead, the others naturally rushed towards the crack. Wu Chang, Luo Yuan, Xiao Chen, Lan Xun, Xiao Baiyi, and Murong Xiao Xiao all pushed their source qi. On one hand, they were guarding against someone suddenly attacking them. On the other hand, they were vigilant of any dangers they might encounter after entering the flowing time temple. With this group of people rushing to the front, the others naturally did not dare to compete with them. With Wu Chang's explosive temper, if they angered him, they might be directly killed. Asterisk shio shio shio. Asterisk the sound of something breaking through the air rang out as one figure after another disappeared into the crack. At that moment, Gong Wenshan glanced at Wu Chang meaningfully and smiled slightly, his smile filled with sarcasm. "What the hell?" Wu Chang frowned, vaguely having a bad feeling about this. However, he still did not think too much about it, only focusing on entering the flowing time temple and snatching star seals and opportunities. However, what happened next stunned him. When his body passed through the crack that had been torn open, an invisible force attacked him from the front and directly pushed him dozens of feet away. Wu Chang's face changed drastically as he quickly stabilized his body and glared at Gong Wenshan gloomily. Gong Wenshan sneered, pointed his finger at him, and said, "Everyone else can enter, but you can't." "Sure enough, it was you who did this." Wu Chang coldly snorted, not understanding that this was Gong Wenshan's revenge. When he threatened his life just now, Gong Wenshan did not react strongly, but now he was waiting for him here. It could be said that this was the best opportunity and the best method. Thinking about it, everyone had entered the flowing time temple, but Wu Chang was blocked outside because of his previous threat. How could he not be annoyed? This guy's heart is completely black. Yang Kai looked at Gong Wenshan, who was smiling happily, and was secretly shocked. Just now, he also thought that Gong Wenshan was afraid of Wu Chang, which was why he had tried to crack the barrier, but who knew he would actually play such a disgusting trick. Thinking so in his heart, Yang Kai did not stop moving forward. After all, entering the flowing time temple was the best option. No matter what happened to Wu Chang and Gong Wenshan later, it had nothing to do with him. "Do you think you can stop me?" Wu Chang looked down coldly and asked. Gong Wenshan smiled and said, "Now that this barrier is completely under my control, I can let whoever I want in, so do you think I can't stop you? Since that's the case, I'll just kill you." Wu Chang coldly snorted as he raised his hands high, condensing two different colored energies from his palms, one fiery red and the other snow white. As soon as these two energies appeared, they gave off completely opposite auras, but surprisingly, these two energies were perfectly combined by Wu Chang, transforming into a red and white ball of light that shot directly towards Gong Wenshan. Gong Wenshan stood in place, not even bothering to dodge, simply sneering. As the ball of light fell, the terrifying power it contained caused everyone who saw it to pale. Yang Kai and the others, who were preparing to rush into the barrier, quickly dodged to the side to avoid being accidentally injured. Seeing that the ball of light was about to engulf Gong Wenshan simply waved his hand and a golden light suddenly separated from the barrier and wrapped around him. The next moment, a loud bang rang out as the power of ice and fire 9-layered heavens burst out. Chapter 2156. After the dust settled, Gong Wenshan stood in place, completely unscathed, and the golden light covering his body showed no signs of damage. He looked at Wu Chang sarcastically and said, "I already said that this barrier is now under my control. Do you still not understand? How foolish." Wu Chang's face changed several times, becoming extremely ugly. The cultivators outside who had not yet entered the flowing time temple were all shocked after seeing this bizarre scene. On the one hand, they admired Gong Wenshan's courage, daring to offend a monster like Wu Chang, but on the other hand, they were shocked by Wu Chang's strength. If such a terrifying blow had fallen on the crowd just now, few would have survived. The confrontation between two powerhouses was bound to bring disaster to the fish in the moat, so after everyone recovered, they used their movement skills and rushed towards the flowing time temple through the crack. "If I can't go in, none of you can," Wu Chang suddenly shouted angrily, and with the idea of harming others without benefiting himself, he suddenly unleashed his ultimate move. He stretched out his hands and seemed to pull out two artifacts from the void. These artifacts were a saber and a sword, both of which were Dao Source grade high rank. The saber was a fiery red while the sword was a flawless white. Pushing his source chi, the saber and sword slashed downwards in a cross-shaped arc. Dodge. Not good. Wu Chang went crazy. What's going on? Everyone turned pale with fright and hurriedly scattered in all directions. But Wu Chang attacked without warning. Coupled with his amazing strength. Even though everyone tried to dodge, there were still some who were unable to dodge in time and were hit by the cross-shaped arc. With a loud bang, a huge crater was formed in the ground in front of the temple, and blood and broken limbs flew everywhere as a large number of people were killed or injured. 5 or 6 people were killed directly, and more than 10 were injured. Yang Kai dodged quickly and was unscathed. Bian Yuqing and Ku Wu, on the other hand, were slightly injured. At this moment, the fear on their faces had disappeared and was replaced with horror. In the face of all this, Gong Wenshan just stood in place calmly, not bothering to use his barrier to protect everyone, nor did he try to block Wu Chang's attack. However, after Wu Chang's attack, he couldn't help grinning, as if his plot had succeeded. "Wu Chang, are you crazy? We didn't do anything to offend you. What is the meaning of this?" "That's right. Wu Chang, you're from a big sect like the Heavenly Martial Holy Land. You should know that every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt has its debtor. It's not like we didn't let you in. Why are you making trouble for us?" "That's right, Wu Chang, don't go too far. You can find trouble with whoever doesn't let you in. What kind of hero are you for attacking us?" Among the group of cultivator survivors, a few of them began to complain, their faces full of indignation. "All right, the two of you shouldn't go in either." Gong Wenshan suddenly pointed to the two cultivators who had just shouted "every debt has its debtor" and said lightly. The two men's faces immediately fell, turning as ugly as they could. "Brother Gong, that's not what I meant. Brother Gong, please be magnanimous and don't hold it against me. Yes, Big Brother Gong, Uncle Gong. Let me in." The two men immediately admitted defeat and begged for mercy. Gong Wenshan ignored them. "Brother Wu Chang." The cultivator named Jing Li suddenly cupped his fists towards the sky with a solemn expression and said, "My benevolent martial sect is a subsidiary sect of the Heavenly Martial Holy Land. Others can't enter, but it shouldn't be a problem for me, right?" Wu Chang did not speak. Jing Li nodded and said, "Many thanks." Saying so, he rushed straight towards the flowing time temple. But just as he was about to step into the temple's entrance, Wu Chang attacked again. A sword wave slashed down in front of Jing Li, almost cutting him in half. "Brother Wu Chang, what is the meaning of this?" Jing Li's forehead was dripping with sweat as he couldn't help but raise his head and ask. Before Wu Chang had time to answer, his expression suddenly became cold and he shouted angrily towards the ground below, I said, since I can't enter, none of you should even think about entering. Saying so, he crossed his sword and saber again, pushed his source chi, and slashed downwards. A shocking wave of energy shot out, cutting through space like a cross-shaped soul-chasing chain, towards the figure below who was rapidly approaching the entrance. After this blow, Wu Chang stood in place calmly and said lightly, "Those who don't listen to advice will only end up dead." Just as he said this in an awe-inspiring manner, his expression suddenly changed as he looked down in astonishment. In front of the entrance below, Yang Kai had to stop because Wu Chang's attack was fast and ruthless. If he didn't stop, he would definitely be hit. Helplessly, he could only turn around, clench his fist, and use his dragon transformation secret technique to wrap his fist with his 5 elements indestructible sword chi before punching out fiercely. Hong long long. The cross-shaped wave of energy released a dazzling light and collided with the powerful fist, splashing the void. Yang Kai took advantage of the recoil and easily jumped into the flowing time temple's entrance, not forgetting to say to Gong Wenshan before leaving, "Many thank." Gong Wenshan stared at the place where Yang Kai disappeared with a strange look on his face and muttered to himself, "This guy, there's something wrong with him." He clearly felt that Yang Kai's cultivation was only at the first order Dao source realm, but he was able to take a blow from Wu Chang right under his nose and emerge unscathed. This was not something an ordinary cultivator could accomplish. Wu Chang was obviously stunned. The moment Yang Kai turned around, Wu Chang recognized this person as the one who had obtained the rhombus-shaped star seal. At that time, he had used a strange secret technique to resolve his and Luo Yuan's fatal blow. That secret technique was extremely mysterious and unpredictable, so Wu Chang couldn't see what kind of secret technique it was. But now, this guy had actually taken a blow from him head-on. This boy was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. This thought involuntarily appeared in Wu Chang's mind. While he was lost in thought, the cultivator below had already rushed towards the entrance at an extremely fast speed, disappearing in the blink of an eye. By the time Wu Chang reacted and wanted to stop them again, it was already too late. He could only watch as everyone rushed into the flowing time temple, leaving him and the other 2 cultivator excluded by Gong Wenshan. Wu Chang. Wu Chang. Gong Wenshan chuckled, repeatedly muttering Wu Chang's name, his eyes filled with sarcasm. "Now that they've all gone in, what are you going to do?" Wu Chang didn't speak, just staring at Gong Wenshan coldly. "Threatening me with your eyes?" Gong Wenshan grinned. "I think you should know what the price for threatening me is. There's nothing wrong with young people being hot-blooded, but being too arrogant." He spoke with the tone of an experienced person, but before he could finish, Wu Chang turned around and disappeared from sight in a few steps. He didn't give me a chance to show off at all. How decisive, he was willing to give up such a great opportunity, but then again, there's no point in staying, Gong Wenshan laughed self-deprecatingly. Then, he also turned around and walked towards the flowing time temple. As he said, there was no point in Wu Chang continuing to stay. Gong Wenshan wouldn't let him in no matter what, so Wu Chang didn't want to see Gong Wenshan take revenge and humiliate himself. It was better to just leave. Go look for your own opportunity. Of course, this enmity had already been formed, so if the 2 met again, Wu Chang probably wouldn't let Gong Wenshan off. "Uncle Gong, come back, come back. Brother Gong, don't ignore us, there are still people here." The 2 cultivator excluded by Gong Wenshan hurriedly shouted, but how could they get any response? After waiting outside the temple for a long time, they could only leave with a belly full of depression. What's going on? Inside the flowing time temple, Yang Kai was stunned by the scene in front of him as soon as he entered. This place was the interior of a huge temple. It covered an area of at least several acres, and in front of him, Xiao Chen, Lan Zun, Luo Yuan, Xiao Baiyi, and Murong Xiao Xiao, who had entered before him, were surrounded by a group of countless puppets, all of them fighting fiercely. The ground was full of metal fragments and puppet parts, so it was obvious that before Yang Kai came in, these people had already killed a lot of puppets. Yang Kai had seen puppets on Shadowed Star before. There was a family on Shadowed Star that specialized in puppetry and could create lifelike puppets. There was no doubt that the star boundary also had puppets, but Yang Kai had never encountered one. Never would he have thought that there would be so many puppets in the flowing time shrine. These puppets were in different shapes, but they could be roughly divided into 3 categories. The first category was humanoid, each of them extremely tall and holding different types of weapons, giving off a majestic aura. The second category was beast-shaped, with tigers, leopards, jackals, wolves, snakes, insects, and butterflies. There were so many of them that it was dazzling to look at. These monster beast puppets could often display monster beast-like attacks with great lethality. As for the third category, it was really difficult to classify them as their appearance was too strange. From their appearance alone, it was impossible to tell what they were based on. This category had the fewest number of puppets, but they seemed to be the strongest. There were at least 100 puppets in the temple, and all of them exuded Tao Source Realm auras. Even though Xiao Chen and the others were all Heaven's prides, it was still difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4. When Yang Kai came in, these people were all on the defensive, none of them had the time to attack. If I had known this would happen, I would have waited outside a little longer. Yang Kai was extremely annoyed. He was originally afraid that some good opportunity in the flowing time temple would be snatched away by others, so he couldn't wait to come in and explore. Who knew that he would encounter such a situation as soon as he arrived? If he had known, he would have waited outside a little longer and waited for these people to kill all the puppets before coming in. Junior brother Yang, be careful, these puppets are not easy to deal with. Murong Xiao Xiao's voice suddenly reached his ear. She must have seen Yang Kai come in and reminded him with concern. Although I want to thank you for your concern, but, aren't you exposing my existence? Yang Kai smiled bitterly in his heart. Sure enough, as soon as Murong Xiao Xiao's words fell, a puppet closest to him suddenly turned around and stared at Yang Kai with a pair of strange red eyes. Chapter 2157. This puppet had a strange appearance, looking like a giant lizard that walked upright. Its forelimbs were short while its hind limbs were extremely well developed. It gave off an indescribably ferocious aura. As soon as it looked at Yang Kai, it immediately opened its mouth and spat out a dark red light. A casual attack with the strength of a Tao Source Realm Master? These puppets are truly extraordinary. Yang Kai felt the impact of the energy from the light and his face changed slightly as he immediately dodged to the side. Su. The light brushed past Yang Kai's body and hit a cultivator who came in after him. This cultivator was quite lucky because before he came in, he had summoned a defensive artifact that looked like an artifact armor and wore it on his body. His original intention was to prevent Wu Chang from suddenly killing him, but by a freak combination of factors, he had saved his life. Hong. With a loud bang, the cultivator could not help but stumble back a few steps as the light from his artifact armor flashed wildly, causing him to cry out in shock, "What the hell is that?" At that moment, a large number of people rushed in from the entrance, and even Gong Wenshan, who was at the rear, revealed himself. It could be said that of the cultivator who had stayed outside the flowing time temple before, except for the few who were killed by Wu Chang, there were only 3 who had been rejected and could not enter. As soon as the auras of living beings increased, the puppets that were besieging Xiao Chen and the others also scattered, greatly reducing the pressure on Xiao Chen and the others. Their stomachs were filled with anger. Killing moves were launched one after another, causing the nearby puppets to be thrown off their feet. From time to time, a puppet would be smashed into pieces by powerful attacks and fall to the ground. Inside each of the shattered puppets, there would always be a fist-sized crystal that exuded rich energy fluctuations. Spirit energy heart, someone exclaimed as they stared greedily at the crystal. Yang Kai's brow twitched. He instantly realized what this thing was. The heart of spirit energy was the core component of the burly puppet. Without it, no matter how lifelike the puppet was, it was merely a dead object. Only when the heart of spirit energy was placed in the puppet could it truly function. However, the heart of spirit energy was extremely difficult to refine. It required the cooperation of a master refiner and a puppet master in order to have a chance of successfully refining it. Therefore, its price had always been high, especially the high-grade heart of spirit energy. It was something that could only be discovered but not sought. There were over 100 puppets in the hall, each of which was at least Tao source grade. In other words, there were over 100 spirit energy hearts here. If he could bring out all these spirit energy hearts and find a puppet master to refine them into shells, he would be able to create an army of Tao source realm level puppet. A cultivator from a top force like Xiao Chen, Kong Qi, and Xiao Bai might not care too much about the value of these heart of spirit. However, the cultivator who came from a small sect or family was different. Among these great forces, it was often extremely difficult to cultivate a Tao source realm master, but a single spirit energy heart was equivalent to a Tao source realm master's combat power. For this reason, how could these cultivator not fight for it? Even if their own sect could not refine a puppet shell, a single heart of spirit energy could be sold for a lot of source crystals. Therefore, after the initial panic, the cultivator who rushed in all became bloodthirsty. They summoned their artifacts and used their killing moves to attack the puppets. Even though the number of puppets was huge, their strength was also not bad, but the puppets could not display their full strength without someone controlling them, so they were quickly forced to retreat. The cultivators who rushed in didn't care about the puppets at all, either attacking them in groups of 3 or 5 or confidently challenging them one-on-one. Almost every moment, a puppet was destroyed, but the price the cultivators had to pay was extremely small. Only a few of them were seriously injured, and not a single one of them died. Yang Kai also took the opportunity to kill a few puppets and harvested a few heart of spirit energy, which he threw into his space ring. As time passed, the number of puppets in the hall became fewer and fewer, while the cultivator became fiercer and fiercer. It was only a matter of time before all the puppets were annihilated. At this moment, a dazzling light suddenly burst out from somewhere in the crowd. Everyone was slightly surprised and all looked at it intently. In mid-air, a pentagonal light spun a few times, then with lightning speed, turned into a stream of light and drilled into the arm of a male cultivator. The cultivator did not seem to have figured out what was going on. He only felt a burning pain in his arm, causing him to cry out in shock. Pentagonal star seal. Lan Zun's beautiful eyes lit up and she shouted, "These puppets actually have star seals?" Xiao Chen had a complicated expression on his face. He turned his head and looked at the puppets around him, trying to see if there were any other star seals. He had destroyed at least 6 or 7 puppets, but such a good thing didn't fall into his lap. He couldn't help but feel a little upset in his heart. This is a star seal." After hearing Lan Zun's cry, the male cultivator was stunned for a while before he immediately grinned and laughed. "I actually got a star seal? Ha 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 ha, it seems that the heavens are also looking after me." He was overjoyed and laughed heartily. Even if some of the people around him did not like his publicity, they could only envy him. However, after this scene, the cultivator's interest in killing and fighting over the puppets obviously increased a lot, and there was even a scene of several people fighting over a puppet. Somewhere in the main hall, a man and a woman, who seemed to be brother and sister of the same sect, were nervously and fearfully attacking a leopard-shaped puppet. This puppet looked almost no different from a real cheetah. It was extremely flexible, but fortunately, this puppet seemed to have no other abilities besides pouncing and biting at close range. Therefore, even if the strength of these two people was not too high, it was not a problem for them to take it down. What made the two nervous was not the strength of this cheetah puppet, but the triangular mark on its forehead. The mark was not unusual. If it was before, these two people might not care too much about it, but after experiencing the scene just now, how could they not guess what it was? Was this most likely a star seal? Previously, dozens of star seals had fallen into the flowing time temple. Hidden in every corner of this temple, it was normal for there to be 3 to 5 star seals among the hundreds of puppets. The brother and sister were not of high birth, and their strength was not too strong. They were afraid that after killing this cheetah puppet, the phenomenon of obtaining a star seal would be discovered by others, thus planting a seed of disaster. Don't look at how happy the guy who obtained the 5-point star seal was now. He must have been targeted by many people, and they were just waiting to attack him when he was alone. Thinking of this, the brother and sister looked at each other and nodded as if they had a tacit understanding. They did not immediately kill him, but instead fought and retreated, leading the cheetah puppet in front of them into the depths of the temple. They wanted to get out of everyone's sight and then obtain a star seal. The main hall was in chaos. Even if the actions of these two people were a little obvious, no one would care. They just thought that they were not strong enough and were forced to do so. The plan and action of the two people were very successful, but just as they were about to leave the crowd, a figure suddenly fell from the sky. One hand clenched into a fist. The figure smashed down fiercely. The brother and sister's hearts sank, but it was too late for them to act. There was a loud bang. The cheetah puppet was directly smashed to pieces, and at the same time, the triangular star seal on its forehead flew out, blooming with light as it flew towards the figure falling from the sky. Just a triangular star seal? The figure glanced at the back of his hand and seemed to be very dissatisfied before turning around to attack the other puppets. Seeing this, the woman of the brother and sister bit her red lips and opened her mouth to say something. However, the man's complexion changed. Tugging at the woman's clothes, he slowly shook his head and whispered, "This person is called Luo Yuan, we can't afford to provoke him." "But that star seal." The woman had an unwilling look on her face. The man smiled bitterly. "Just pretend you didn't notice." "That's clearly ours," the woman said angrily. If they had known that Luo Yuan would suddenly appear, they would have dealt with the cheetah puppet earlier, saving them the trouble of making a wedding dress for someone else. The man comforted the woman again, and only then did she stop looking for trouble with Luo Yuan. The man understood that there was no reason to talk to people like Luo Yuan. If you tried to reason with him, he would just use his fists. The killing in the hall lasted for a full hour. Dozens of top Dao Source Realm cultivator from the Southern Territory's various sects and families finally destroyed all the puppets after paying a small price. Not to mention the valuable spirit energy heart, 3 star seals appeared. In addition to the 5-point star seal obtained by the man at the beginning and the triangular star seal obtained by Luo Yuan, there was also a rhombus-shaped star seal similar to the one on the back of Yang Kai's hand. This star seal was obtained by Murong Xiao Xiao by luck, so Xiao Xiao was naturally overjoyed, because now, she was qualified to enter the Shattered Star Sea and search for her own Emperor's path. It wasn't until now that everyone had time to take a good look at the hall. The hall covered a large area and was now covered in puppet fragments. Looking around, there was an obvious passage in front of them that seemed to be the only exit. There were no puppets guarding the exit, nor were there any traces of spirit arrays, so it seemed very safe. However, everyone was cautious and did not rush towards the exit, instead finding a place to sit cross-legged and restore their strength while waiting for the first person to come forward. Kong Chi of Seven Glories Chamber of Commerce suddenly came up behind Gong Wenshan again and asked with a flattering expression, "Brother Gong, what do you think of the situation over there?" Gong Wenshan narrowed his eyes and looked at him. "Brother Kong, I find that you are even more shameless than before. Why do you always ask me about everything? I didn't create this flowing time temple." Kong Chi grinned meaningfully and said, "Capable people do more work." With Brother Gong's understanding of spirit arrays, if there was any danger over there, you would have seen through it immediately. "Since you're shamelessly flattering me," Gong Wenshan snorted, stood up reluctantly, and walked over, "Then I'll go take a look." Chapter 2158. Gong Wenshan muttered to himself as he walked towards the exit. Kong Chi couldn't help feeling stunned on the spot. Yang Kai had indeed come here to ask Gong Wenshan to check if there were any spirit arrays at the exit, but he hadn't expected the other party to agree so readily, without any intention of refusing. This was completely inconsistent with Gong Wenshan's usual character. Considering all this, Kong Chi's expression changed slightly as he hurriedly stepped forward to catch up. "How can I let Brother Gong take such risks alone? This Kong is willing to accompany you. As brothers, we should share joys and sorrows. Are you sure?" Gong Wenshan tilted his head and looked at him with a teasing look. Ah! Kong Chi's heart was filled with a myriad of thoughts, mainly because the other party's expression was too intriguing, making him feel a little anxious. He didn't know how to answer in a way that would satisfy the other party, but in the end, he grit his teeth and said, "I'm sure." "Good." Gong Wenshan shrugged his shoulders and continued walking forward, just follow me closely. Hearing this, Kong Chi was overjoyed, knowing that his answer just now was definitely correct, but on the surface, he remained calm and said, naturally, Brother Gong should be careful. As the two spoke, they arrived at the only exit in front of everyone's eyes. At this time, the cultivator who was meditating in the main hall also paid close attention to Gong Wenshan's movements, fearing they would miss something. Gong Wenshan's ability to break spirit arrays had been witnessed by everyone before. If there was a hidden spirit array at the entrance, Gong Wenshan would definitely be able to see through it. For a time, everyone held their breath, waiting for the results to appear. Gong Wenshan stood in front of the entrance and carefully observed it, his expression constantly changing, causing everyone around him to be on edge. After a long time, he said leisurely, sure enough, there is no mistake. This entrance is just an ordinary one, there is no danger. Saying so, he walked directly towards the entrance. Kong Chi hurriedly followed. The two disappeared from the entrance in the blink of an eye. What a bunch of tricks! Xiao Chen snorted discontentedly. When he saw Gong Wenshan's expression change several times before, he thought he had discovered something, but in the end, this result made Xiao Chen feel like he had been played. Lan Xun smiled slightly and said, this Brother Gong is also a proud and arrogant person. Come to think of it. Have you noticed? Xiao Baiyi suddenly came to the two of them, looked around, and said solemnly, Wu Chang is not here. Xiao Chen frowned. What do you mean? What does his presence have to do with us? Xiao Baiyi glanced at him, then shifted his gaze to Lan Xun. What do you mean by that look? Are you looking down on me? Xiao Chen was immediately unhappy. Lan Xun frowned. He suddenly thought of something. What Brother Xiao Bai means is, Gong Wenshan was the one who prevented Wu Chang from entering this place? Xiao Baiyi nodded solemnly, that's exactly what I thought. Gong Wenshan was able to break this barrier, so perhaps he can also control it. Everyone else has basically entered, so there's no reason Wu Chang couldn't. There is only one explanation for this situation. Gong Wenshan didn't let him in. At this point, Xiao Baiyi sighed and looked at Lan Xun sincerely. Your Highness, I am Azure Sun Temple Xiao Baiyi. I'm not. Brother Xiao Bai. I know. Lan Xun smiled, but you have the same surname as Big Brother Xiao Chen, so I can't call you that. Didn't that young Kai call you Xiao Bai before, so I... Does Brother Xiao Bai care about this? Not at all. Xiao Baiyi denied flatly, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he said coldly, after we get out, I'll tear that guy's mouth. If you delay any longer, everyone else will have left, so let's go first. Xiao Chen couldn't get a word in edgewise, so he could only change the subject. Lan Xun turned her head and found that almost all the cultivator in the hall had left, leaving only the few of them still standing in place. She nodded and said, then let's go. Xiao Baiyi winked at Murong Xiao Xiao and the two of them immediately used their movement skills to rush towards the entrance. Damn it, we've been tricked. Yang Kai couldn't help shouting as soon as he rushed into the entrance. This was because the world in front of him suddenly twisted and changed, transforming into an empty grassland. This grassland was filled with tall grass, and in his field of vision, there were blue skies, white clouds, and lush green grass. The environment was extremely beautiful, but this was obviously not a scene that should exist in the flowing time temple. An illusion array? Yang Kai's brow furrowed as he stood still. He wasn't surprised by the scene in front of him, perhaps because he had a faint premonition that something similar would happen before he came in. The reason for this was naturally because of Gong Wenshan. From the way he dealt with Wu Chang before, Yang Kai could tell that Gong Wenshan was definitely not as approachable and calm as he appeared on the surface. On the contrary, this guy seemed to be unable to bear the slightest loss and was full of evil tricks. Wu Chang had only threatened him with a few words, yet he had forced Wu Chang to stop outside the flowing time temple, forcing him to watch helplessly as everyone else entered the temple. From this, it could be seen that this person was a vengeful person. Kong Chi asked him to investigate the only exit, and Gong Wenshan readily agreed, but Yang Kai felt that something was wrong. Gong Wenshan didn't seem like the kind of person who would make sacrifices. His personality was destined to lack a noble and selfless character. Of course, this was human nature. Sure enough, this entrance wasn't like what Gong Wenshan said, but rather a pleasant surprise waiting for everyone. Yang Kai just didn't know if this illusion array was arranged by Gong Wenshan himself or if it was something that existed in the flowing time temple itself. If it was the former, it would be easy to deal with. In such a short time, even if Gong Wenshan was a spirit array grandmaster, it was impossible for him to arrange such a profound illusion array. Perhaps he had just summoned an array plate to hinder the pace of those who came after him. If that was the case, the illusion array in front of them could be broken quickly. After all, Gong Wenshan's strength was obvious. But if it was something that existed in the flowing time temple itself, that would be a bit terrifying. Because even Gong Wenshan hadn't noticed anything wrong before and had rushed in with a confident look on his face. This illusion array was so exquisite that even someone like Gong Wenshan had been deceived, so how could others possibly break it? Perhaps they would be trapped here for the rest of their lives. Thinking so, Yang Kai took a deep breath, calmed the tension in his heart, and comforted himself. I hope it was Gong Wenshan's doing. While speaking, Yang Kai slowly closed his eyes, but when he finished speaking, he suddenly opened them again. A vertical golden light had appeared in his left pupil, giving off a dignified and solemn aura, as if it could pierce through the void and see through all illusions. Yang Kai slowly turned his head and looked around. After a short while, he couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. At this point, he had determined that this illusion array wasn't something that existed in the flowing time temple itself, but something that Gong Wenshan had arranged on the spot because it was under his demon eye of annihilation. Yang Kai had quickly found the weakness of this illusion array. He had also seen through the distorted and illusory scene. After thinking about it, Yang Kai didn't try to break the array violently, but instead walked out along the weak point. At the same time, in an almost identical illusion, Lan Xun was holding something that looked like a night pearl in her hand. The night pearl exuded a soft light, dispelling the illusory scene around her, and emitting a clear light in front of her, guiding her on the way forward. Xiao Chen followed closely behind her and coldly snorted, "It's just a trivial illusion array. Let me break it directly, why go through so much trouble, Your Highness?" Lan Xun pursed her lips and smiled. As a person, one should fulfill the wishes of others. Gong Wenshan didn't hesitate to use an array plate to arrange this illusion array in order to delay the speed of others. If we break this array, won't all those people come out? I don't want to do such a thing, they won't give me any benefits. Your Highness, you. Xiao Chen stared at Lan Xun's back in amazement. He didn't expect that in just a few days, the princess, who had always been pure and kind, would be contaminated by the Great Thousand Worlds. For a moment, Xiao Chen felt a sharp pain in his heart. On the other side, Xiao Bai Yi and Murong Xiao Xiao both had their eyes closed, groping around in this illusion array like blind people. They seemed to be walking casually, but in fact, they were slowly moving out, making it impossible to tell how they were doing it. An illusion array? Ridiculous. In the face of absolute strength, everything is trash. Luo Yuan had always adhered to the truth that strength was supreme, so even after falling into this illusion array, he didn't flinch, instead pushing his source chi and using his strongest moves to bombard his surroundings. However, these attacks, which were enough to crush a Dao Source Realm cultivator, didn't even cause a ripple after they hit the surrounding area, like stones sinking into the sea. Although this illusion array was hastily arranged by Gong Wenshan using an array plate in a short period of time, how could it be easily broken by brute force? The Gong family was a master of spirit arrays, so before Gong Wenshan arranged this illusion array, he had already taken into account the combat power of Luo Yuan and the others, making sure that even if they tried to break it by brute force, it would not be completed in a short time. The reactions of these top masters were basically the same as the reactions of other Dao Source Realm cultivators after falling into an illusion array. Those who understood spirit arrays would try to find the array core and crack it. Those who didn't understand spirit arrays would naturally have to resort to brute force. Yang Kai and Lan Xun, on the other hand, could easily find the weak points of the spirit array with the help of a special power. Naturally, they could easily walk out of this illusion array. After spending less than a cup of tea's worth of time, Yang Kai had already reached the outside of the illusion array, and the field of vision in front of him distorted again. The blue sky and white clouds suddenly disappeared and were replaced by a dark and deep passage. Yang Kai immediately withdrew his demon eye of annihilation and with a tap of his foot, rushed to the bottom of the passage. Looking ahead, Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. Why are there so many forks? In front of him, there were at least a dozen forks in the passage ahead, each of which he couldn't see what was inside. Each of these forks gave him a creepy feeling, as if they were all leading to the same road of no return. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.